Chapter 1482. Long time no see, hee hee. The city lord of the immortal scripture city looked at the calm Qin Hao and chuckled. His eyes no longer had the awe he had for Qin Hao. On the contrary, there was a faint disdain in his eyes. Back then, I erased all your imprints and aura. After so many years, I didn't expect you to come back. However, what surprised me even more was that you, the reincarnation of a mighty person, are still in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. It seems that you haven't improved much. Thinking back to the past, how much awe did this old guy have for him? But now, this face was really asking for a beating, so much so that Qin Hao revealed a brilliant smile. Yes, you were scared like a dog back then and knelt in front of me. Alas, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. This old guy was just a true immortal king. Even if he was the most powerful true immortal king in the chaotic boundless world, he was nothing in the great world of CND, where true immortal kings were everywhere. Not to mention King Ying, King Luoying and King Sword Qin Tai Su, even Qin Wanxiang and Mo Shilin were stronger than this old guy. Even Star River King Qin Hao didn't care, let alone this old guy. Crash! Qin Hao's words caused an uproar among the onlookers. The city lord of the immortal scripture city knelt in front of him. Although everyone was in disbelief, Qin Hao's expression at the moment didn't seem to be lying. The city lord of the immortal scripture city's face instantly turned into a monkey's butt, which also vaguely proved this point. You are presumptuous. What nonsense are you talking about? I am the city lord of the immortal scripture city, the current master of the chaotic boundless world. Kneeling in front of you, a little Daluo Jingxian? Old man really admires your imagination. The city lord of the immortal scripture city was extremely ashamed and angry. He didn't expect Qin Hao to be so bold. He dared to directly fall out with him and even mention this in front of him. If Huang Tianhua hadn't appeared, he would have accepted it. That was the performance of a wise man submits to circumstances. But now, with Huang Tianhua's incomparably powerful backing, things were different. He only needed to follow Huang Tianhua, and his future would be bright. Becoming an immortal emperor and stepping into the immortal world would be a piece of cake. How could Li Mubai compare to Huang Tianhua? Therefore, at this moment, he felt deeply humiliated. No matter what, he could not admit that he had knelt in front of everyone. That would be too shameful. Imagination? Qin Hao smiled and shook his head. Although I don't like fence-sitters, I understand that you are more or less thinking about the future of the entire chaotic universe. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Kneel down and apologize to me now. I can pretend that nothing happened. His indifferent voice was still extremely calm. However, the calmer it was, the more arrogant Qin Hao was to the point of being unreasonable in the eyes of the crowd. Even if he was an extraterrestrial visitor, he was just a cultivator of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. What kind of existence was the city lord of the immortal scripture city? Arrogant. The city lord of the immortal scripture city was livid. He looked at Qin Hao with eyes full of anger. Lock him up. Chi. 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 The endless immortal scripture laws instantly condensed into chains of order that symbolized the supreme Tao law of the chaotic universe. They wrapped around Qin Hao. The aura of the three great immortal scriptures, the Desolation Scripture, the Celestial Emperor Scripture, and the Chaos Scripture suddenly surged out. Chi. Just when everyone thought that Qin Hao was going to be imprisoned, a bright light suddenly flashed between Qin Hao's eyebrows. Immediately, everyone felt a blur in front of their eyes. The chains of order formed by the city lord of the immortal scripture disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by a beautiful figure that exuded a cold aura but had a hot and sexy figure. What? The city lord of the immortal scripture city was shocked. Huh? What a stunner. Not bad, not bad. Huang Tianhua's pupils shrank and his eyes suddenly lit up. He said proudly, not hiding his aura. He could sense that the stunner who appeared was definitely stronger than the city lord of the immortal scripture city, even though the other party had not reached the realm of a true immortal king. However, he was not afraid at all. The person who appeared was Ruo Xian, who was in Chen Hao's mind world. Ruo Xian, who seemed to have not come out of her sadness, ignored the city lord of the immortal scripture city's shock and Huang Tianhua's burning gaze. After dissolving the city lord of the immortal scripture city's magic, she looked at Chen Hao with a trace of inquiry. Kill him. Chen Hao calmly spat out 2 words. Wait. Huang Tianhua suddenly reached out to stop him. Qi. Unfortunately, Ruo Xian ignored Huang Tianhua's words. The moment Chen Hao said those 2 words, Ruo Xian's already sad eyes suddenly became extremely cold. A killing intent that made one's soul tremble suddenly erupted. At the same time, she took a step forward and charged towards the city lord of the immortal scripture city. Wild, ferocious, and fiery to the point that it made people dumbfounded. How was this something a beauty would do? If you don't want to die, retreat immediately. At this moment, Chen Hao swept his gaze across the surrounding cultivators who were imprisoned by the pressure and said. Hearing Chen Hao's words, everyone suddenly felt the pressure that enveloped their bodies disappear and they regained their freedom. How could they dare to hesitate? In an instant, they all retreated, but no one chose to retreat too far because what happened at this moment was too shocking and curious. You're courting death. Although your aura is strong, you're only at the 8th level of the Dao severing stage. The city lord of the immortal scripture city said angrily. As he spoke, he suddenly took a step back. 10 elders with powerful auras suddenly appeared in front of him. Each of their auras was that of a true immortal king, but they were much weaker than the city lord of the immortal scripture city. However, they were still 10 true immortal kings. Qi! 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 At this moment, countless powerful auras suddenly flashed over and appeared in the sky above the immortal scripture city. These people were obviously experts from the sects who had brought their disciples here. Mubai, it's Mubai. 2 of the figures revealed shocked and excited expressions the moment they saw Chen Hao. Who else could it be but the 5th Grand Elder Duan Ziyu and Li Mubai's original master, Tian Wanxiang? The 2 of them wanted to rush to Chen Hao's side, but they were blocked by a terrifying pressure restriction. At this moment, Chen Hao, who was inside the restriction seal, shook his head slightly at the 2 of them, stopping them from forcing their way in. What happened? Countless people immediately locked onto their disciples and asked. The 10 great elders. When did the 10 great elders become true immortal kings? Sensing the terrifying aura, whether it was the immortal scripture city's envoy or the sect experts who were waiting here, they were all shocked. Ruo Xian frowned slightly and stopped for a moment. She looked at Chen Hao again. Wait. At this moment, Huang Tianhua waved his hand and said to the 10 great elders. Yes, master. What shocked everyone was that the 10 great elders of the immortal scripture city actually bowed and responded, calling Huang Tianhua master. This shocked countless experts who had rushed over, but at the same time, they were puzzled. Any one of the 10 great elders of the immortal scripture city was comparable to the sect master of a top sect. And now, they had all advanced to the true immortal king stage. What kind of concept was that? But they actually called Huang Tianhua master. Chapter 1483. Hee. Miss, you're from the great world of Xiandi, right? I'm Huang Tianhua, from the immortal world. Soon, I'll step into the great world of Xiandi. I like women like you. Follow me in the future. Huang Tianhua stared at Ruo Xian with burning eyes and said proudly. That condescending and unquestionable tone, the confidence that everything was under control, as if no one would refuse his words. It was a pity, Ruo Xian didn't even look at him. She just stared at Chen Hao, waiting for Chen Hao's decision. Kill them all. Chen Hao didn't even frown and said coldly. 10 true immortal kings who were much weaker than the city lord of the immortal scripture city. At best, they were just cannon fodder that added a little difficulty. Qi. After receiving Chen Hao's order, Ruo Xian didn't hesitate and advanced again. She wasn't afraid of the strongest city lord of the immortal scripture city. So what if there were 10 more weak true immortal kings? She stopped just to know Qin Hao's intention. Attack together, kill. You're courting death. The 10 elders, who were already waiting, saw Ruo Xian attack directly and sensed the terrifying aura. How could they dare to hesitate? I saw that your aptitude was good and let you follow me. It's a blessing that you've cultivated for thousands of generations, but you don't know what's good for you. Li Mubai is at most the reincarnation of an immortal emperor. In front of me, he's just an ant-like existence. If you stop now, it's not too late to join me. Otherwise, you'll regret it. When Ruo Xian and the 10 elders were fighting, Huang Tianhua said angrily. From the beginning to the end, he, who was so awesome, was completely ignored by Ruo Xian. This caused him to feel extremely displeased. However, Ruo Xian's appearance, figure, temperament, aptitude, realm, and strength all moved him. This was something that had never appeared in the chaotic boundless world. Moreover, Huang Tianhua was very clear that such a woman was rare even in the great world of Xiandi. What was even rarer was that Ruo Xian still maintained her primordial yin body. Of course, the most important point was that Ruo Xian was Li Mubai's woman. Huang Tianhua could not swallow the fact that he did not get Nguyen Tan Lan and was almost killed by Nguyen Tan Lan in the evil spirit. It was a pity that he could not find Nguyen Tan Lan now. At this moment, the appearance of Li Mubai undoubtedly gave Huang Tianhua a better vent. To be able to get Ruo Xian, who was more powerful and more perfect than Nguyen Tan Lan, was undoubtedly better than getting Nguyen Tan Lan, who did not have a primordial yin body. Qin Hao did not speak, nor did he look at Huang Tianhua. However, at this moment, a bright light suddenly bloomed between his eyebrows again. In an instant, a beautiful woman, who was not inferior to Ruo Xian but had a very different temperament, came directly to Ruo Xian's side at an amazing speed. It was as if she had gone through thousands of running-in times. She did not seem to feel that there was any sudden movement when she cooperated with Ruo Xian. In an instant, not only did they suppress the 10 elders, but even the city governor of the immortal scripture city was also under their attack. This figure was naturally Ruo Lan. The moment Ruo Lan and Ruo Xian joined forces, the power and pressure that burst out shocked everyone. Roar! Boom! Then, what was even more unexpected was that Qin Hao's eyebrows bloomed again with a bright light. As the light rushed into the void, a resounding dragon's roar suddenly broke out. At the same time, an indescribably terrifying pressure swept out. The world suddenly darkened, and the entire space was shrouded under a huge figure, covering the sky and the sun. What is this? Daluo Golden Wonderland. Heavens, how can the Daluo Golden Wonderland have such a terrifying aura? Even my soul is trembling. Fortunately, its pressure is restricted by my own realm. Is this the reincarnation of the ancient Dragon King? At this moment, countless exclamations broke out, and these exclamations were undoubtedly the experts of the sects and forces who had rushed over, as well as the top experts of the immortal scripture city. How could the genius disciples of the Daluo Golden Wonderland speak? Their souls felt like they were being imprisoned. Heavenly Dragon. Huang Tianhua, who was arrogant and domineering as if he could control everything, was shocked at this moment. He took several steps back and cried out in fear. As an existence of the upper three heavens in the immortal world, how could he, who had already awakened, not recognize the appearance and aura of the Heavenly Dragon clan? Although the Heavenly Dragon clan's foundation was not yet established in the upper three heavens, they were an existence that could move unhindered in the middle three heavens. In the upper three heavens, ordinary experts did not dare to provoke them. How could Huang Tianhua dare? Hiss! The incomparably huge heavenly dragon's original form only appeared for a moment before it suddenly turned into a human form. It went in front of Qin Hao and bowed like a servant. Greetings, master. Qin Hao nodded slightly. After responding, he finally looked at Huang Tianhua and said, "You want to do whatever you want just because you came from the upper three heavens? Before you awakened, although you were annoying, you were still in the category of a human. After you awakened, you were not a human anymore. With such a temperament, no matter how strong you are just trash. Little Tsang, I'll leave it to you. Chen Hao's voice was still indifferent, but at this moment, in the eyes of everyone, there was no sense of pretentiousness. Strong, that was true strength, enough strength to look down on Huang Tianhua. Because of Tsang Longyuan's pressure. At the same time, because of Huang Tianhua's shocked appearance. Yes, master, please don't worry. Tsang Longyuan cupped his fists and bowed in response. Then, he took a step forward and went directly in front of Huang Tianhua. A wild and fierce aura, along with a bone-chilling killing intent, erupted from between Tsang Longyuan's eyebrows. The golden godhead's pressure rolled out. Just a trash from the upper three heavens, and you dare to boast in front of my master? Impossible, impossible. You are the reincarnation of the heavenly dragon, the spirit of all living things, how can you recognize him as your master? Huang Tianhua's eyebrows twitched violently, and the godhead's aura began to bloom under Tsang Longyuan's pressure. He thought that the 10 true immortal kings and the city lord of immortal scripture city were enough to suppress Ruo Xian and Chen Hao, and victory was in his hands. Unfortunately, it was just a few words, and Ruo Lan, who was not inferior to Ruo Xian, appeared. What was more terrifying was that the strength of the two of them combined had more than doubled. They directly suppressed the city lord of immortal scripture city and the other 11 people. However, at that time, he still did not panic. Even if the 11 people were killed, he believed that no one could trap him, and before he left, he only needed a little time to kill Chen Hao, who was only Daluo Jingxian. But now, the reincarnation of the heavenly dragon, the spirit of all living things, and with such a powerful godhead's pressure, actually called Chen Hao master. I really admire your courage. I'm just the reincarnation of the heavenly dragon, and in front of master, I'm barely qualified to be his ride, and you're afraid? If you knew that the son of heavenly lord Jiu Xian was killed by master with one hand, how would you feel? Chapter 1485. WH. What? Impossible. Impossible. Ah. Huang Tianhua was terrified and suddenly screamed. At the same time, his throbbing glabella finally erupted madly, completely activating the godhead. Unfortunately, this kind of godhead pressure was nothing in front of the heavenly dragon's coercion. Chi. It was also at this moment that Tsang Longyuan made his move. The moment Tsang Longyuan made his move, everyone's attention was attracted by the terrifying screams. They looked at Ruo Xian, Ruo Lan, the 10 great elders, and the city lord of immortal scripture city. Puff. Rumble, what? Ah, countless people screamed, almost unable to believe their eyes. The 10 true immortal king elders were annihilated by the terrifying attacks of Ruo Xian and Ruo Lan almost at the same time. They screamed and turned into a cloud of blood mist, their physical bodies collapsed, and their primordial spirits were bound. The most powerful city lord of immortal scripture city, although he escaped the terrifying attack, was bathed in blood. His old face was filled with incomparable horror. Impossible. Impossible, especially when he saw Tsang Longyuan completely suppress Huang Tianhua without any suspense, his eyes were filled with endless regret as he murmured. He immediately gave up resistance and knelt on the ground with a plop. My lord, I was blind and looked down on you. I only did this because I was pressured by that shameless Huang Tianhua. I didn't think that my lord was the one who could move unhindered in the celestial realm. He's worse than a dog in front of you. My lord, please spare us. We did all this for the sake of the billions of living beings in the chaotic great thousand world. Such a speechless scene forced Ruo Xian and Ruo Lan to pause and look at Chen Hao. At this moment, the surrounding cultivators were all dumbfounded. Was this really the city lord of immortal scripture city, the master of their chaotic great thousand world? Previously, when Chen Hao said that he had knelt in front of him, although everyone saw that Chen Hao did not seem to be lying, they could not believe it. Now, they had no choice but to believe it. Chi. Ah. Rumble. It was also at this moment that Sang Longyuan, who had long been fully awakened and had undergone the tempering of the great world of CND and had been greatly improved in Chen Hao's abnormal mental space, destroyed Huang Tianhua's physical body in just a few moves. His huge dragon claws directly suppressed the shackles of the godhead that was about to escape. Then, with a flash of his figure, he appeared in front of Chen Hao, waiting for his punishment. Chi 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 chi. It was also at this moment that numerous impatient figures flew out from between Chen Hao's brows. They were Yin Xian, Zhou Qinglong, and Xiang Tiange. Chen Hao directly absorbed Huang Tianhua's godhead into his glabella and said, "Since you guys are pleading for him, he can be spared from death." "Thank you, boss." Yin Xian and the others bowed to Chen Hao at the same time and said. Even the effeminate Zhou Qinglong looked serious. This was because they all knew that Chen Hao did not have the intention to kill. Once he moved, no one could stop him. However, this time, he spared the life of the city lord of Xianjing City because of them. Shao Xian, Qinglong. The city lord of Xianjing City said gratefully. He looked at Yin Xian, Zhou Qinglong, and the others as if he had seen the closest people to him. Tears streamed down his face. "Fuck, old man, can you stop pretending? I know that your acting skills are good, and I know that you really did it for the chaotic boundless world, but this time, you really played the wrong role and followed the wrong person. Why don't you thank boss for not killing you?" Zhou Qinglong came in front of the city lord of Xianjing City and said gently. The city lord of Xianjing City had cultivated the 10 great evildoers. Whether it was in the past or now, he was their elder. However, at this moment, Zhou Qinglong had to remind him. Because Chen Hao only said that the death penalty could be avoided. "Sir, don't talk nonsense, open the soul residence." Chen Hao coldly interrupted the city lord of Xianjing City and said without hesitation. "Soul residence." The city lord of Xianjing City's expression changed. "City lord, boss told you to open it. The celestial venerables of the immortal world are nothing in boss's eyes. Why would he care about you?" Yin Xian said in a deep voice. "Okay, Qi." When the city lord of Xianjing City had no choice but to completely open the soul residence for Chen Hao sent out a wisp of divine sense into his glabella. Immediately, the city lord of Xianjing City's expression changed. Finally, he sighed softly and calmed down. "Thank you, master, for not killing me." The city lord of Xianjing City bowed and said. Chen Hao ignored him and floated directly to Duan Ziyu and Tian Wanxiang, who were still immersed in great shock and had not recovered. "Master." Chen Hao bowed. "You can't." Fifth Grand Elder Tian Wanxiang hurriedly bowed to Chen Hao and stopped him. "A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. Master, don't be like this." Chen Hao smiled slightly, completely different from his previous cold self. "Senior brother." Han Fei, who had a conflict with Huang Tianhua before, looked at Chen Hao excitedly and shouted, rubbing his hands nervously. He had heard from his master that his senior brother was an unimaginable existence, but when he really saw him, he didn't expect him to be so powerful. Although his senior brother didn't make a move, he was only Daluo Jinxian's senior brother. In his mind space, there was an existence that could kill the city lord of Xianjing City, and there were also the 10 great monsters who were once famous in the chaotic boundless world. To be able to conquer them, how strong was his senior brother? After Chen Hao smiled at Han Fei, he looked at the 5th Grand Elder and said, "Master, is there no news of Qinglan in the Hunyuan sect?" "No. No one knows when she broke through the demon barrier and stepped out of the Hongmeng domain. It's just." The 5th Grand Elder looked at the city lord of Xianjing City as he spoke. "It's me. I planted a seal on her body, but I didn't sense her coming out. Her aura only remained a little when she stepped out of the Hongmeng domain's exit before completely disappearing." The city lord of Xianjing City said tactfully. "Mubai. Actually, Master knows that you shouldn't be Mubai. When your physical body collapsed in the sect, perhaps it was when you truly awakened? The sect master and Qinglan's master know this, and Qinglan can't forget you." Master speculated that she might have gone to the demon abyss. The fifth Grand Elder suddenly transmitted his voice. Demon abyss. 2 hours later, Chen Hao gave the fifth Grand Elder, Tian Wanxiang, and Han Fei a good fortune and left directly, coming to the demon abyss that he had been to before. Chen Hao sensed the old god's aura in the Star River tunnel that was much fainter than before, and slight ripples appeared in his tranquil heart lake. Old god, this guy. What kind of existence is he? With the improvement of his experience, the awakening of his inherited secret skills, and the refinement of the godhead, Chen Hao's knowledge had undoubtedly reached a level where he could look down on the rest of his life. But the more so, the more he felt that the old god was powerful and mysterious. At the same time, an emotion that existed in the depths of Chen Hao's heart became clearer. Phew! With a long sigh, Chen Hao's terrifying perception spread out. Chapter 1486. At the same time, his mind was also immersed in a soft aura. It was the aura of Nguyen Tan Lan's primordial yin. However, when Chen Hao and Nguyen Tan Lan parted ways, the primordial yin had been sealed in the depths of his body and had never been used again. This primordial yin was of a very low level to the current Chen Hao. It was even of no value to him. However, when he felt the faint, soft aura, Chen Hao's state of mind fluctuated slightly. Naturally, the figure of Nguyen Tan Lan appeared in his mind. What he did not understand in the past, he now understood. What he could not see clearly in the past, was now clear. Nguyen Tan Lan was a strong woman who approached him in order to reach the peak of martial arts. Even when they parted ways, she did not show any weakness. Unfortunately, in Chen Hao's eyes, she was a woman who only wanted to reach the peak of martial arts. She was a woman who could be ruthless and let go of everything. Nguyen Tan Lan had always thought that Chen Hao was immersed in a state of madness and had never truly awakened. It was also because of this that Nguyen Tan Lan was so strong. All kinds of coincidences and misunderstandings led to the current situation. Otherwise, Chen Hao knew himself very well. With his character, it could be said that he would definitely leave with Nguyen Tan Lan instead of staying. It's really here. After a long time, Chen Hao looked in the direction of where they were standing and said with great certainty. He sensed Nguyen Tan Lan's aura. Although it was very weak, so weak that it almost did not exist, under the influence of Nguyen Tan Lan's primordial yin aura, it still could not escape Chen Hao's abnormal perception. Since there's her aura, it's easy. Trace it back. Chi. Chen Hao let out a groan. Nguyen Tan Lan's primordial yin floated out of her body. At the same time, immortal rays burst out of her body. Mystical runes merged with the primordial yin. The entrance of the tunnel began to vibrate strangely. A moment later, the primordial yin flowed like ink, and under the effect of a series of mysterious runes, it slowly outlined a graceful figure in the void. It was Nguyen Tan Lan. She stared quietly at the entrance of the Milky Way tunnel. Her gaze was bitter and distant, as if she wanted to see the other side of the starry sky. After an unknown period of time, the scene changed. Nguyen Tan Lan's figure directly turned into a stream of light and rushed into the remaining Milky Way tunnel. I hope it won't take too long. If that's the case, it'll be easier to find her. Chen Hao also turned into a stream of light and chased after Nguyen Tan Lan. Chen Hao knew very well that it was almost impossible for Nguyen Tan Lan to enter the chaotic universe through the Milky Way tunnel. First, this was not the real Milky Way tunnel. It was just the remnant aura of the Milky Way tunnel, and it started from the hands of the old god. Now, many years had passed, and its aura had become weaker. More importantly, it was only at the end of the chaotic universe. After going a certain distance, one would find nothing, just like the highest elder. Second, Nguyen Tan Lan was just a practitioner who had just stepped into the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. How could she compare with the highest elder? What Chen Hao was most worried about was that Nguyen Tan Lan's aura had completely disappeared. In that case, even if he used the divine sense to trace the origin, it was almost impossible to find Nguyen Tan Lan. Moreover, Nguyen Tan Lan was very likely to be lost in the chaotic space. Back then, Itaichi's abnormal flying machine was lost in the depths of the chaotic space. If it had not met the highest elder of the Hunyuan sect, it was almost impossible to step out of the chaotic space. The chaotic space was a domain that even a true immortal king could not completely conquer, let alone a practitioner of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Are you all on your way back? In the immortal realm, Yilan looked at the people in front of her in surprise. Yes, Master. Master, why haven't you entered the immortal realm during this time? And we met some people we didn't know. Si Xian asked. Along with Si Xian were Qin Shui, Helian Wuzi, Chen Ling, Qin Yan, Chen Nan, Du Jing, and the others. They were all born in the chaotic universe in the immortal realm. Although they had been in Chen Hao's mind during this time, they would enter the immortal realm from time to cultivate. The yin and yang dual gods, moving side by side, was the best way to cultivate. In Chen Hao's mind, the speed of their improvement was a bit too shocking. The freakish spacetime laws and the cultivation environment comparable to that of a lesser immortal realm allowed everyone's strength to improve at a tremendous rate. Chen Nan, Coiling Dragon, Du Jing, and the others in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm had all reached the point where they could sever their Tao. However, this was no trivial matter. With their current strength and talent, although the chances of failure were very small, once they severed their Tao, it meant that their Tao was set in stone. It could not be done casually. You've met them. Well, at least 1,000 people have entered, it's not strange that you've met them. I've been busy with these matters during this time. I didn't want to tell you before, but after all, I've recovered to the true immortal king realm and everything is still under control. Those are the spirits of all things, right? Si Xian asked. How did you know? Fatty. Chen Hao told me, Si Xian said. Chen Hao had received this information from Yang Luyan in the immortal realm. The spirits of all things that had appeared in the ancient chaos great thousand realms were more numerous than the great world of CND, and more complex. Not only were there spirits of all things reincarnated from the immortal realm, but there were also spirits of all things reincarnated from the divine and demonic realms. How did Hao know? We're not sure either. Master, he's very powerful and mysterious now, you should ask him directly if you have any questions. We're all in his mind now. Si Xian said. Yilan looked at Qin Shui and the others, who also shook their heads. Why didn't he enter the immortal realm? We're not in the Star River Tunnel. He's traveling through the chaotic space. What? Yilan was shocked. He hadn't contacted them for a while, how could there be so much information? Yilan felt that many things must have happened, and they were beyond his imagination. Phew, you should tell me in detail what happened during this time. Didn't you say that Hao would only come out after a long time after entering the Emperor's Star Secret Realm? Yilan started, and Si Xian told him how Qin Hao had returned from the Emperor's Star Secret Realm early, as well as what had happened during the ranking competition. Even though Si Xian's words were simple and straightforward, Yilan's expression was still agitated and shocked. When Si Xian talked about how she had become King Ying's disciple, and how Qin Hao and the others had been reunited with King Ying, Yilan couldn't hide his excitement. Chapter 1487. After a long conversation, Yilan finally understood the situation of Qin Hao and the others. He proposed to set up a sensing rune in the chaotic space at the place where Qin Hao had triggered the golden scale to transform into a dragon and shattered the void as the core point, waiting for their return. Everyone also learned about the current situation of the ancient chaos boundless world from Yilan. The awakening of the spirits of all living things, especially the spirits of all living things from the immortal, god, and devil realms, had caused the recently unified vast thousand domains of ancient chaos to once again become turbulent. The terrifying talent of these spirits of all living things had also shaken the faith of the practitioners of the vast thousand domains of ancient chaos to the killing god Qin Hao. The original galaxies were forced by Yilan's strength. Although there was no open competition for the controller's throne, they basically had one or more spirits of all things with unlimited future that they had to support. Si Xian's third life, Xiaofeng, was still in the 10-direction territory. The situation was unclear. So, I'm afraid many spirits of all things from the 10-direction territory have entered. Qi. Chen Hao, who was shuttling through the chaotic space, looked at Si Xian, who reported the situation to him and said calmly. Should be. After all, the spirits of all things that appeared were basically from the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Stepping into the 10-direction territory to advance their realm is also something they must do. My master's suggestion is, don't stay in the chaotic space for too long. Okay. I'll try my best, Chen Hao said softly as he stared at Nguyen Tan Lan's shadow that was fading away. After sending Si Xian back to the mental space, Chen Hao thought for a moment and let Ruo Xian, who was currently the most powerful person with him, temporarily replace him to control and follow Nguyen Tan Lan's shadow. This shadow was formed by Chen Hao using a powerful inheritance unique skill to trace the origin. It guided Chen Hao's direction. As for its speed, the faster Chen Hao was, the faster it would be. Therefore, it took Chen Hao a few hours to help Ruo Xian control the phantom temporarily. After that, Chen Hao entered Ruo Xian's mind world. Then, he focused all his attention on the Godhead space. Old God. What are your orders, Master? I don't dare to order you around, but please do me a favor. Ahem. Master, you don't have to be so polite. Old God said awkwardly. I know that you might be suspicious and wary of me, but I have already told you everything I know. Old God's mind could be said to be connected to Chen Hao. Even if he was separated by Chen Hao, he could still grasp Chen Hao's thoughts. During this time, Chen Hao did not seal off his perception of the outside world. Therefore, when Chen Hao said this, Old God knew that Chen Hao was suspicious of him because of the galaxy tunnel. I know. Therefore, I will not seal off your perception of the outside world. Perhaps, you and I are both under its control. What do you think? Chen Hao smiled faintly. This kind of expression, this kind of smile, made Old God nervous. As the person who was most familiar with Chen Hao, how could he not know that this was the beginning of their estrangement? Master, don't think like that. Although I don't know what is going on, as you awaken, I will know more. At the very least, since I started following Master, it has never forced me to do anything that would harm you. Old God said. That's right. But even after I awakened my inheritance and refined Gu Xian's heavenly venerate Godhead, I still don't know about you. Or rather, what kind of existence is it? It can't truly separate you from me. I believe that you can't truly leave me, right? That year, when my true self underwent nirvana, I thought you were gone. After all, that was true destruction. My soul, physical body, and soul palace were completely destroyed, but you were still there. The only explanation is that you and it are in my soul origin imprint, but you don't belong to the origin. Cough, cough, this should be. Old God said awkwardly. He really didn't know. You know my character. I don't like to be controlled by anyone or anything. Even if it's harmless to me, I won't be willing. So, when I'm strong enough and have the ability to uncover the truth, I'm afraid that you'll become my enemy uncontrollably. This is not something I want to see, but it seems that neither of us can change it. No, that won't happen. Master, you have to believe me. Although I don't know what is going on, I can feel that it has no malicious intent towards you. Is that so? Yes. I am sure. Old God said. He wanted to explain further, but a mystical power appeared in his mind at this moment, causing him to forget what he wanted to say. It was as if he had never thought of it before. Similarly, even he himself did not know that the mystical power had appeared before. Chen Hao naturally didn't feel anything, and it was impossible for him to feel anything. Alright, let's not talk about this. I want you to cooperate with me to refine a batch of flying machines. The materials are all ready made, and the divine ability runes used are all up to me. You only need to refine according to my instructions. Chen Hao shook his head and changed the topic when he saw that the unperturbed God did not answer his question. Yes, Master. Old God replied in a deep voice. Chen Hao didn't say anything else. With a thought, the ores and materials that he had accumulated in the Emperor Star's secret realm and over the years appeared around him like mountains. The knowledge of refining immortal pills and magic treasures had already awakened in Qin Hao's mind. However, at this moment, Qin Hao was only in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Even if he had fully comprehended the mysteries, it was impossible for him to fully display them. At this moment, Old God's usefulness was highlighted. Because now, Qin Hao knew that Old God had borrowed the power of it in his mind to refine weapons and pills. The so-called natural alchemy furnace, natural flying machine, and whatnot were all fake. Let's begin. Yes. After Qin Hao and Old God's minds were connected, he said in a deep voice. As he spoke, countless materials flew up, and dense immortal qi rolled over. Meanwhile, the Old God had transformed into a gigantic cauldron. Countless ancient and profound runes that contained the supreme truths of heaven and earth were carved on the inside and outside of the cauldron. At an astonishing speed, the cauldron began to absorb and spit out vast amounts of immortal energy and mineral veins. The refining began. This was the first time Qin Hao was refining a weapon after awakening the legacy's secret art, and it was refining a flying machine. In the vast and boundless chaotic space, if Nguyen Tan Lan's traces were not completely cut off, then it would be fine. However, if he couldn't find a trace of her origin with her primordial yin qi, then he wouldn't be able to find her in a short period of time. After all, it was Ito Tai Chi who had drifted for 10,000 years, therefore, Qin Hao wanted to refine the strongest flying machine he could currently make. Mending the day before yesterday. Chapter 1488. Thousands of years passed in the blink of an eye. Powerful warships floated quietly around Qin Hao. In front of Qin Hao stood a 5- or 6-year-old boy with a metallic luster all over his body. He touched his arms and legs excitedly and said, "This is great, master. Xiaoji finally has a body. Arms are arms, legs are legs. Ha ha ha. I'll change." Buzz. The boy was Xiaoji number 1, who had awakened his spiritual intelligence. He was so excited that he suddenly shone with a metallic luster again. The boy's body suddenly changed at the speed of light. "Brother Hao, hee." Pfft. Seeing Xiaoji's appearance and the sound it made, Qin Hao almost choked. Who else could it be but Qin Shui? If it weren't for the faint metallic luster and life origin, even Qin Hao wouldn't have been able to see any difference between Xiaoji and Qin Shui. Senior brother. Ha! Xiaoji can be master's woman and can also be master's brother. Ha ha ha. As long as I imitate their life origin aura and realm aura, no one will be able to see through Xiaoji's disguise except for those who are really familiar with me. Hee hee. Xiaoji then turned into a coiled dragon, which was also very lifelike. As it spoke, it turned into Qin Yan, who had a mischievous look on her face. Even though this was all within Qin Hao's expectations, it still made Qin Hao sweat profusely. Master. This is the perfect combination of advanced technology and Tao. Xiaoji is a self-derived spiritual intelligence. It seems to already have the life origin aura. I really didn't expect. Old God said in surprise as he looked at Xiaoji, who was constantly changing. This time, Qin Hao had been the one in control of the refinement process. Old God was the perfect executor and had realized Qin Hao's intentions to the best of his ability. Refining 10,000 battleships was already enough to shock the Old God, not to mention spending 100 years to modify Little Wisdom 1. This was something that the Old God had never imagined before. The combination of advanced technology and Taoist magic could be so perfect. Stop dazzling. You can show off again when you can completely restrain the metallic aura. Qin Hao stopped Xiaoji and looked at Old God. You didn't expect this, and neither did I. The combination of advanced technology and Taoist magic has lowered the standards of Taoist magic to a large extent. For example, Little Ji's transformation ability is definitely not inferior to the ultimate form of the Great Change technique, and its imitation ability is incomparable to the Great Change technique. That's true. Moreover, this is still limited by your cultivation level. If you are stronger, you only need to refine it again to make it stronger. This is equivalent to being able to mass-produce experts. You're oversimplifying things. In fact, although Xiaoji has its own consciousness, its high-tech and Taoist techniques are all refined. Firstly, there is a limit to the number of times it can be used. Secondly, it needs to be replenished regularly. So, in many ways, it can only be considered a powerful offensive weapon. More importantly, refining it took 100 years and a large amount of mineral veins and energy. Master, none of that is a problem. After all, Xiaoji has already realized how to repair its runes. The only flaw is that it can't absorb the energy of heaven and earth on its own, and needs you to provide it. Maybe you can figure it out. It'll be difficult. It needs to understand Tao and be compatible with the laws of heaven and earth before it can be done. That means that Xiaoji has to be able to cultivate and understand Tao on its own. This may not be too much of a problem for Xiaoji. But if that's the case, it can't be considered a mass production expert. That's true. But no matter what, it's already very impressive. That's about it. Let's leave it at that. 1,000 years. Almost 4 months have passed in the outside world. Xiaoji, take over control of all the warships as soon as possible and be on standby. Chen Hao stepped out of the divine persona space and came out between Ruo Xian's eyebrows to take over. Phew. Thank goodness you came out. If you didn't come out, we might have lost contact. Ruo Xian said with a long sigh. Her expression was obviously very tired, but there was no coldness and depression between her eyebrows. Not bad. In less than 4 months, you actually comprehended 10%. Otherwise, if it was just controlling it, you would have been completely cut off from her aura, Chen Hao said with a smile. You said I only comprehended 10%? Ruo Xian said in surprise. You think it's not enough? This is a heavenly venerate unique skill. Although it's the simplest type, the laws of heaven and earth it contains are not simple. With your realm, it's already very rare to be able to comprehend 10% of its mysteries. Of course, if you and Ruolan can merge into one, you might be able to increase it by 5%. Chen Hao said with a smile. As he spoke, his gaze was fixed on Ruo Xian's eyes. Don't test me. Ruolan and I will always be best sisters. She is her, and I am me. Even if because of this, we can't step onto the peak of martial arts, it doesn't matter. Alright. Actually, I just want to tell you that even if you merge, it's not as scary as you think. The most important thing is how you do it. Alright, you can go in. I should be able to hold on for a while. Of course, if you help me comprehend it, I might be able to hold on for longer. Now, you need time to cultivate your Yin spirit. You don't have to be polite with me. Ruo Xian said. She had no interest in the topic of merging with Ruolan. No need. Your speed is too slow. If this continues, I'm afraid you won't be able to reach the vicinity of the ancient chaos boundless world without thousands of years. I don't lack this time. I can't rush it, Chen Hao said. Up to you. Ruo Xian didn't insist after hearing Chen Hao's words. She knew that Chen Hao's ability to travel through space was something that even a real immortal emperor couldn't do. His speed was indeed not something she could compete with. After Ruo Xian entered Chen Hao's mind, Chen Hao's speed directly increased countless times. He began to travel through space with the ability to travel through space. However, he didn't really start to travel through space. Instead, he was at the edge of traveling through space. This was the only way to maintain his lock on Wentan Lan's aura. 3 days later, Chen Hao, who was flying at high speed, suddenly froze and stopped. The aura of the Milky Way tunnel has completely disappeared. It was originally the remnant aura of the Milky Way tunnel. After countless years, as they went deeper and deeper, it couldn't last long under the terrifying energy storm of the chaotic space. Without the aura of the Milky Way tunnel, she has no direction. According to the time she might have stepped into this place and my analysis of speed, I could have caught up to her. What a pity. Chen Hao thought to himself. Chapter 1489. More importantly, without the aura of the Milky Way tunnel, Wentan Lan's aura had completely lost its support. In the depths of the chaotic space, where there was nothing to rely on, it would completely disappear after experiencing the baptism of several space storms. At that time, Chen Hao's trace of the original aura would be cut off. Sure enough, as Chen Hao expected, with his speed, it did not take long for the aura to be completely cut off. Moreover, Chen Hao found that Wentan Lan's route was completely irregular, which meant that she had been lost in the chaotic space. It seems that it will take some time. 10 years. If I still can't find you in 10 years, I can only let Xiaoji stay here alone to continue the search. Chen Hao looked at the disappearing shadow and said softly. He did not have much time to waste. Not to mention Wentan Lan, even if it were Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, and the others, Chen Hao could only make the same decision in the end. The awakening of many spirits of all things, the threat of the Milky Way king of the great world of CND, the awakening of the mighty figures of the three realms of chaos, the loss of faith, and the surging undercurrents could once again break the unified situation at any time. This was not a matter of whether he loved her or not, but how deeply he loved her. For the sake of the greater good, Chen Hao shouldered too many hopes and missions. He could not afford to waste too much time for one person. He released Xiaoji and all the warships to join the army to search for Wentan Lan. Chen Hao acted alone. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. During these 3 years, Chen Hao had been searching at the speed of shuttling through the starry sky. Every time he reached a certain distance, he would use Wentan Lan's primordial yin to trace the origin. This method was like looking for a needle in a haystack, but there was no doubt that in the depths of the chaotic space without any reference, this was the only way to find Wentan Lan. On this day, Chen Hao suddenly exclaimed with surprise. He who was moving forward at an unbelievable speed suddenly froze and stopped, and his gaze was extremely surprised as he looked ahead. Strange, how could such a huge fragment escape my senses? At this moment, in front of Chen Hao, an enormous star fragment that looked like a mushroom cloud was floating about 10,000 kilometers away. It was the sudden appearance of this star fragment that made Chen Hao stop. What an amazing shielding ability! Chen Hao's perception was so abnormal that it could extend for billions of miles even in the chaotic space. Yet, he couldn't sense this huge star fragment even when he was tens of thousands of miles away. If he hadn't seen it with his eyes, he would have bumped into it. And now, after Chen Hao carefully probed with his mind, his expression became even more shocked. This is a natural shielding ability. The star fragment must contain some kind of magical mineral vein. Phew, this is definitely a priceless treasure. Chen Hao said excitedly. Even he didn't expect to encounter such an opportunity. After refining Shi Chao and Heavenly Lord Gu Xian's divinity, coupled with the awakening of his own inheritance, his perception had reached an unimaginable level. Even the perception of a true immortal king was defeated by him in an instant. And this star fragment was clearly in front of him, but he couldn't sense it. How strong was this shielding ability? Chi! Chen Hao's figure moved like a bolt of lightning. He arrived directly above the mushroom cloud and slowly descended. Hiss! As he continued to approach, Chen Hao was surprised to discover that his perceptual ability was rapidly being compressed. When he was only 3,000 feet away, his perceptual ability was completely compressed into his body, as if he had become an ordinary person. It's actually so powerful. Chen Hao was extremely shocked, but what made Chen Hao even more shocked and fearful was that the moment his feet stepped on the star fragment, his mind exploded with a boom, and it was also at that moment that Chen Hao lost his perception of the space in his mind. At the same time, all the abilities in his body mysteriously disappeared. What did this mean? Immortal. Not only did his perception become immortal, but his strength and abilities also became immortal. He couldn't sense any fluctuations of the Great Path Law, and he couldn't use any power. What? What is going on? Chen Hao swept the mountain rocks that stretched as far as the eye could see with astonishment as he felt that a gravity that shouldn't have appeared in this chaotic space, and he was filled with shock and bewilderment. Even if Chen Hao's mental state was strong and his will was firm, he still faintly felt uneasy at this moment. What did it mean to lose all the abilities of a cultivator? Without the ability to fly, without the ability to absorb the energy of heaven and earth, in the depths of this chaotic space, on this uninhabited star fragment, there was only death. Old God, old God. Are you there? Can you hear me? Chen Hao shouted. Unfortunately, old God didn't respond. Ruo Xian, Ruo Lan, and all the people in his mind who had the authority to sense the outside world didn't respond to Chen Hao's shouts. Phew. I thought I found a priceless mine, but I didn't expect it to be a land of death. Divine ability, law, energy, and perception completely lost. Isn't this just immortal? It shouldn't be. Even Gu Xian's memories didn't have such a land of death. No. Chen Hao suddenly thought of something. This is a chaotic space, how can a mortal stay in it? Besides losing my abilities, I don't feel any discomfort, which means I didn't really lose my abilities, but all my senses were cut off. Smart. Ha. Who is it? Chen Hao was shocked, and he quickly turned around to look in the direction of the voice, but other than mountain rocks, there was no one else. Guess. Ha. The voice said again. It was obviously a female voice, and it was obvious that she was deliberately suppressing her voice. This made Chen Hao extremely surprised. You know me? Chen Hao looked around, but he still didn't find anything, and he frowned slightly. Of course, otherwise why would I use a fake voice and ask you to guess? Ha, I didn't expect to meet you here. I have to say, your luck is really too good. Who are you? Chen Hao asked again. Chen Hao thought of all the people he knew, but he couldn't find anyone who could appear here. After all, this was the depths of the chaotic space. Could it be? You're Qinglan. Qinglan. Oh, the person you're looking for. She's not here, but since you're nearby, then she should be in this area too, right? The Celestial Realm Stone happened to be here, and maybe she will be here soon, but I don't know if she can survive. What do you mean? This star fragment is called the Celestial Realm Stone. Then who are you? Chen Hao asked 3 questions in one breath. Ha, look at how anxious you are. If you can guess who I am, then I'll answer your questions, the voice said. Guess your ass. Chen Hao really wanted to say this. Since it wasn't Nguyen Tan Lan, which woman could be here? And to use such a tone to talk to him, she must be much more knowledgeable than him. Chen Hao's mind quickly calculated, and he couldn't help but think seriously about who she was. Finally, he locked onto a person that Chen Hao felt was impossible, but very likely. Chapter 1490. Yang Luyan. In Chen Hao's knowledge, all women, even top experts like King Ying and King Luoying, were far less knowledgeable than him. After all, he had obtained the memories of Gu Xian and Shi Chao. One was the reincarnation of a celestial emperor, and the other was the reincarnation of a celestial master. Both of their knowledge stood at the peak of the world that Chen Hao knew. The only exception was Yang Luyan, who controlled the space of the celestial realm. It should be. She can control the space of the celestial realm, which is also a real existence. How can it be impossible for her to appear in the chaotic space? Moreover, she knows me very well, and with her tone. Thinking of Yang Luyan, who he felt was completely impossible, Chen Hao felt that it was more possible. The reason why he felt it was completely impossible was that Chen Hao had always been affected by the mindset that the space of the celestial realm was a virtual world. Even if it was a supreme existence, it was impossible for a virtual character to come out. The fact was that the space of the celestial realm was real. Guess. Yang Luyan seemed to be still childish and urged with anticipation. Yang Luyan. Chen Hao said directly. Ah. Boring, you guessed it so easily. It seems that I have said too much. Yang Luyan was slightly surprised, but not too surprised. You can leave the space of the celestial realm? Of course, the space of the celestial realm is just a space of the Een God, which is opposite to the existence of the vast thousand worlds. In fact, the space of the celestial realm is just a strand of my divine thought. I am not so bored as to stay there every day. Yang Luyan said, but I didn't expect such a coincidence. It is indeed a coincidence. Old friend, can you answer my question now? Chen Hao said with a smile. I said, don't call me old friend, bumpkin. Sorry, I forgot. Yan, tell me. Chen Hao said awkwardly. Although Chen Hao did not have much contact with Yang Luyan, he knew that this high and mighty existence did not have the slightest bit of arrogance, and also did not have the demeanor of an elder. If not for her knowledge and experience that Chen Hao could not compare, he was afraid that he would have thought of her as a naive little girl. That's more like it. Hee. Alright, I'll tell you the answer now. The Immortal Boundary Stone is also known as the Immortal Mortal Boundary Stone. It is the predecessor of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Stone, and one of the most mysterious existences in the world. Let alone you, even I. Yes, even my father can't fully comprehend its mysteries. According to my father, it is an immortal stone that was born in the primal chaos, and it is closely related to the River of Life. It has a mysterious connection with the River of Life. Such a powerful background? Chen Hao exclaimed. Then what is the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Stone? Even though Chen Hao didn't know what the 6 Paths Reincarnation Stone was or what it was used for, he could tell that the Immortal Realm Stone had a great background. It was formed in the chaos and was closely related to the River of Life. How could it be simple? The 6 Paths of Reincarnation Stone is the reincarnation hub for all life forms that have died due to involuntary reincarnation. The 6 Paths of Reincarnation are the 6 paths on earth that you know. Karma, providence, and other supreme heavenly Daos were contained within. It was formed from the Immortal Realm Stone. The 6 paths were the Heavenly Tao, the Mortal Tao, the Azura Tao, the Beast Tao, the Hungry Ghost Tao, and the Hell Tao. The Immortal Realm Stone's function is not a true reincarnation cycle, nor does it have the 6 paths. You are still you, but it will send you to the world where you have the imprint. That's why I said this is your opportunity. You mean I can be sent to Earth? Chen Hao exclaimed. That depends on what you choose. You only have the imprint, not the origin. Indeed, the chaotic universe, the great world of CND, the chaotic universe, and the heavenly river all have your imprint. When the time comes, whichever aura you choose will naturally send you to that world. Of course, if you have the imprint aura of someone else or another world on you, you can also go to that world. Isn't this too powerful? Chen Hao exclaimed. Yes, it's not just in this galaxy. It's an existence that surpasses the boundless galaxies. Unfortunately, it's far too difficult to find. To be more precise, the chances of it appearing in a galaxy are far too low. Even I've only found it once after searching for hundreds of millions of years. You're quite lucky. Can you take it? Chen Hao asked without hesitation. How could Chen Hao not know how valuable the Immortal Realm Stone was? This was simply too timely for him. He needed it too much. If it was just a round trip, how could it be enough? When he'd seen it before, it was merely a fragment of a mushroom cloud. Chen Hao felt that as long as his mystique recovered, it wouldn't be difficult to store it in the great world in his mind. Store it? You're quite daring. I just said that even my father couldn't fully comprehend its mysteries. No one in this world can store it. Cough cough. Yan, your father, should be the previous ruler of the Immortal Realm? Chen Hao couldn't help but ask. Ruler of the Immortal Realm? Yang Luyan was slightly taken aback. That's not wrong. In your heart, the ruler of the Immortal Realm is the highest existence. My father can indeed manage the Immortal Realm, so powerful. Yang Luyan's words confirmed Chen Hao's guess. However, it seemed that Chen Hao had still underestimated Yang Liuyan's father. Chen Hao couldn't help but be shocked. Of course. By the way, you haven't entered the immortal realm during this time. I was just about to tell you that you might not be able to meet the real me in the future. I mean, in the immortal realm. Yang Liuyan continued. What's wrong? Chen Hao was puzzled. Yang Liuyan had just said that the immortal realm was just a wisp of her divine sense. It couldn't affect her at all. How could she not appear? My mission is complete. Everything just needs time. Originally, in another 3 million years, my father would have come to take me away. Now that I've encountered the immortal realm stone, I can go back directly. When the immortal realm stone sent me away, it didn't leave behind a wisp of divine sense. Chen Hao, because you and my father's childhood are a little similar, and you're also from Earth, I wanted to befriend you. You're the only friend I've made in this star field. It's because of this that I've said so much to you. Work hard, and perhaps you'll have a chance to step out of this world in the future. At that time, perhaps we'll have a chance to meet again, hiss. Yang Liuyan's voice was getting closer and closer. When she laughed, she was almost right in front of Chen Hao. It was also at this time that Chen Hao felt a fragrant wind blow against his face. A figure appeared in front of him. She raised her chin slightly, tilted her head slightly, and smiled sweetly at him. Chapter 1491. Chen Hao's eyes widened as he stared blankly. Had Chen Hao never seen a beauty before? He had, and which one of his companions wasn't a stunning beauty? But at this moment, seeing Yang Liuyan for the first time really made Chen Hao stare blankly. What kind of concept was that? If it was the Chen Hao of the eastern continent when he first met Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, Chen Hao, and the others, it was understandable that he stared blankly. After all, at that time, Chen Hao didn't have much experience. But now, after experiencing all these women and seeing the world, he actually stared blankly at Yang Liuyan. Then what kind of beauty was Yang Liuyan? Ha! Yang Liuyan stretched out her left thumb and index finger to hold her chin. She still slightly raised her chin and said proudly, what do you think? Am I beautiful? Cough cough, beautiful. I knew that the vague appearance you showed me in the immortal world was fake, but I didn't expect it to be fake to this extent. Chen Hao coughed awkwardly and said hurriedly. Needless to say, Yang Liuyan was absolutely extremely beautiful. But the thing that truly caused Chen Hao to be stunned was Yang Liuyan's bearing. It was a type of beauty that was contradictory to the extreme, yet seemed to be completely natural. When he first looked at it, it was dignified and peerlessly pure, yet when he looked at it again, it was naive, pure, and lively. It caused others to have the feeling of prostrating themselves in worship, yet it also caused others to feel tender affection and doting towards her. You're also very handsome, just a little bit worse than my father. Yang Liuyan didn't have the slightest distance, as if she and Chen Hao had been friends for many years. She naturally leaned against a huge rock beside her and said with a smile. Chen Hao stared. Was this a compliment to him or to her father? What Chen Hao didn't know was that if people who were familiar with Yang Liuyan, or Yang Liuyan's father, knew that Yang Liuyan said so about Chen Hao, they would definitely be extremely shocked. This was absolutely a super high evaluation that had never been seen since ancient times. One must know that even in the face of so many incomparably outstanding younger brothers, she only had one evaluation, barely passable. Compared to her father, he was just dung grass. Sit. Don't tell me you're embarrassed. Seeing that Chen Hao was still in a daze, Yang Liuyan teased. How could that be? You're not affected by the immortal boundary stone. Everyone would be affected. It's just that my cultivation level is much higher than yours, so my situation is better than yours. May I ask, what realm are you at? Chen Hao asked. In Chen Hao's opinion, since Yang Liuyan could control the space of the immortal world, she must be in existence above the immortal emperor realm. After all, the Empyrean heavenly stairway was the end of the immortal world. You're taller than anyone you know. This is for you. Yang Luyen smiled and suddenly took out a guanine jade pendant and handed it to Qinhao, changing the topic. It looked like an extremely ordinary jade pendant. And Qinhao did not have any perception ability at the moment, so what kind of aura the jade pendant emitted was not something that the current Qinhao could sense. However, Qinhao did not think that Yang Luyen would give him an ordinary jade pendant. This is... My mother made it. To me, it's a protective talisman. To you, it's just an ordinary jade pendant. However, with it, when the immortal boundary stone is activated, you can choose the world I want to go to based on its aura. What do you think? Interested? Yang Luyen stared at Qinhao and asked. Qinhao paused for a moment, then shook his head. I knew you wouldn't go now. I was just joking. In fact, you can't go now. Keep it. If you can step out of this galaxy in the future, remember to activate it. Alright, the immortal boundary stone is about to activate, I hope. Yang Luyen looked at Qinhao and paused for a moment, then said, we'll meet again one day. Good thing you're still working hard. Wang. Whoosh, it was also at this moment that Qinhao suddenly felt the ground beneath him start to shake. Immediately, the immortal boundary stone, which seemed to have been shielded from the spatial storm, suddenly started to blow downwards. It was a downwards wind caused by the absorption of spatial energy from the ground. Qinhao, who had lost all of his god power, was instantly plastered to the ground. Moreover, the suction force became stronger and stronger in an instant. Yang Luoyan's situation was not much different from Qinhao's. She was also sucked to the ground. Qinhao, the painful journey is about to begin. With your endurance, it shouldn't be a problem. You said that Nguyen Tan Lan might be sucked here too. Based on the speed of a cultivator in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, the immortal boundary stone can absorb a distance of at least 20,000 years without stopping. You found this place. Although you didn't find Nguyen Tan Lan, she should still be in this space, right? If nothing unexpected happens, she'll also be sucked here by the immortal boundary stone. However, it's hard to say whether she can withstand it. Even if she can, it's hard to say whether you'll meet her. However, there should be a high chance. After all, she's looking for you, right? It's activated. Are we just going to be sucked in like this? The suction force is getting stronger and stronger. As more energy is absorbed, the suction force will become stronger and stronger. When it's satisfied, we'll begin to teleport. If we can't withstand it before the teleportation begins, there's nothing we can do. Whoosh, as Yang Luyen spoke, the wind became even more terrifying. Qinhao felt like he was being squashed. However, his strong physical body didn't feel much. Where do you plan to teleport to? Ancient Chaos, Qinhao said directly. Yang Luoyan's introduction of the immortal boundary stone made Qinhao understand that this was undoubtedly the best opportunity to return to Earth. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to return to Earth. However, if he went back, the chances of him coming back would be equally slim. Therefore, he had no choice. Ancient Chaos needed him. Although he could still control it now, what about after a while? Why not choose Earth? That's your origin. You learned about the mysteries of Earth in the immortal realm. If you go back, it'll be more suitable for your enlightenment and growth. Moreover, spirits of all things are born and awakened on Earth. You won't lack opponents. I also want to go back. That's my origin. However, Ancient Chaos is already my root. Right now, Ancient Chaos needs me even more. Qinhao said. Earth also needs you. Alright, up to you. Actually, I just want to tell you that Earth is better for your growth. Since you've decided, it's up to you. Whoosh. 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 Bang. Rumble. As the suction force soared, the surrounding star fragments and spatial energy transformed into a terrifying spatial storm that surged towards the immortal boundary stone. Although Qinhao had lost his divine ability and strength, his abnormal physical strength didn't affect him. Yang Luyen also didn't feel anything. However, the two of them were quickly submerged by the huge stone and energy that was devouring them. Chapter 1492. As time went by, the pressure on Chen Hao became greater and greater. The terrifying energy, like a surging tide, began to crazily extract the energy in Chen Hao's body. This made Chen Hao slightly surprised. Fortunately, it didn't take long before Chen Hao felt his body lighten. Goodbye. Almost at the same time, Yang Liuyan's voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Take care. Chen Hao knew that this should be Yang Liuyan's last farewell. Although he couldn't say it out loud, Chen Hao still said it in his mind. Immediately, Chen Hao stepped into a new space. His perception, strength, magic, and so on were all restored. Unfortunately, Yang Liuyan was no longer by his side. At this moment, he seemed to be in a vast and boundless night sky. Countless stars were blooming brightly. Some were big, some were small, some were far, and some were near. It was like a fairy tale world, beautiful and fantastical. But what attracted Chen Hao's attention was the colorful light belts that led to infinity with him as the core. Each of the 7 colored ribbons contained a completely different aura, but most of them were unfamiliar to Chen Hao. How can there be so many? Among them, Chen Hao could clearly tell from the aura contained in the 5 colorful light belts that they corresponded to the earth, the vast 1,000 worlds of ancient chaos, the vast 1,000 worlds of immortal emperors, the vast 1,000 worlds of chaos, and the Milky Way star zone, which was also the vast 1,000 worlds of Milky Way. According to Yang Liuyan, Chen Hao only needed to step into the corresponding aura of whichever world he wanted to go to, but what was going on with those worlds that were completely unfamiliar to Chen Hao? Could it be that my origin contains the aura of so many worlds? Does this mean that I have been to so many worlds? Chen Hao was really surprised. There were at least 8 or 9,000 rainbow-colored light ribbons in front of him. If there weren't 10,000 of them, then there would be at least 8 or 9,000 of them. If there was one every day, then it would lead to a world that Chen Hao had been to before. Only a world that he had been to would have its aura. But how could Chen Hao have been to so many places? It's impossible for the current me to have been there. That's the world that my past self, the world that I've experienced through hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of reincarnations? It must be. Then what kind of existence am I? Chen Hao was a little shocked by his past self. He was also a little confused and fearful. He had always insisted on being himself in this life. Even though he no longer rejected the inheritance of absolute arts and was prepared to fully awaken, he was still a little worried when he saw his complicated self at this moment. While Chen Hao was still immersed in shock, he suddenly felt a pulling force. Is it about to begin? It seems like we can only stay here for a limited time. Chi. Chen Hao glanced at the aura from the earth and resisted the urge to go back. He stepped into the colorful light belt that returned to ancient chaos. Buzz! The moment he stepped in, all of Chen Hao's senses suddenly disappeared again. There was only light left in his eyes. 7-colored light, rotating light. It seemed like it was only an instant before all of his senses reappeared. To Chen Hao's surprise, he had returned to the void of the ancient chaos boundless world. The Divine Palace? Sensing the aura below him, Chen Hao discovered that he had been directly teleported to the second heaven above the Divine Palace. The Divine Palace after the unification of the 10 major galaxies. In the core square of the Divine Palace stood a huge statue. It was Chen Hao himself. What Chen Hao did not expect was that at this moment, the core square was crowded with countless cultivators. The people of the 10 major galaxies were still divided into 10 major areas. Except for the tens of thousands of cutting Dao true immortals, almost all of them were cultivators of the Daoyuo Jingxian and the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Ha ha ha. This is the genius that Ao Tian was talking about. He can't even withstand a single blow. Weak, too weak. At best, he's below average in our Destroyer of Heavens. Yes, I knew it. The tyrants must be the strongest. Why should we let the humans lead us? The competition has just begun. It's not certain who will win or lose. This time, the insectoids must be first. TSK, you lot. Didn't you just awaken a dozen or so spirits of all creation? You'll be surprised later. You'll know that the only ones who can truly unify the ancient chaos is us, the Protoss. Is that so? Do you think the heavenly demons are pushovers? Voices drifted clearly into Qinhao's ears. Even though Qinhao was at the second heaven, it could not stop Qinhao's abnormal senses. Looking down from afar, Qinhao's expression did not change at all. From Xi Xian, he already knew what was happening at this moment. He had thought that he would not be able to make it in time no matter what, but he did not expect to encounter the immortal realm stone that only appears once in 100 million years. TSK, TSK, TSK. Streams of light drifted past. Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, Xi Xian, Chen Nan, Pan Long, Du Jing, and the others appeared one by one beside Qinhao. This. Are we really here? How? What happened just now? We suddenly lost our senses of the outside world. Fortunately, your mind world remained calm and let us know that you're fine. Chen Shui said. That's too fast. We can feel the space-time laws of more than 30,000 times inside. It doesn't feel like much time has passed. Boss, what happened just now? Everyone asked in surprise. Qinhao did not seal their senses of the outside world, but when they encountered the immortal realm stone, their senses were completely isolated and sealed in Qinhao's mind world. Even with the abnormal space-time laws, they did not feel that much time had passed. However, their aura had already reached the void of the ancient chaos vast thousand domains. However, their senses were not as abnormal as Qinhao's. They could not pass through the barrier of the second heaven and sense their specific location. Naturally, they could not capture what was happening in the temple. The only thing they could be sure of was that they had already arrived in the ancient chaos vast thousand domains. We encountered the legendary. Qinhao said. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he realized that the immortal realm stone did not exist in the legends. He hurriedly said, the legendary miracle has miraculously teleported us back. CC, the control contest that Master Yilan mentioned seems to have just begun. Ah. How do you know? Xi Xian was surprised and asked. We're above the second heaven above the temple. I can sense it, that's great. Master has already prepared to give up his position temporarily. Since we're back, there should be no problem. How? Let's hurry over. Xi Xian said excitedly. No hurry. There's plenty of time. Qinhao smiled and the space between his eyebrows flashed again. Miao Xian, Ning Jing, Qin Yang, Wani Shui, Shui Fian, Ao Qian, Ling Feng, Rulan, Ruoxian, and the others who had never been to the ancient chaos vast thousand domains stepped out of Qinhao's mind world one by one. Chapter 1493. Miao Xian and the others were slightly surprised as they sensed the Tao law that filled the world. They could feel that although the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was not as abundant as that of the great world of CND, the Tao law that filled the world seemed to be stronger than that of the great world of CND. How is it? Qinhao smiled and looked at Ruoxian and Ruolan. The two of them were infinitely close to the true immortal king realm. They only lacked some kind of opportunity. Therefore, there was no doubt that their perception was more accurate. I didn't expect the Tao law of heaven and earth of ancient chaos to be so strong. I feel that even the great world of CND is inferior to it, immortal, god, demon. These are the three most powerful auras. The great world of CND is only dominated by the immortal Tao. Ruolan and Ruoxian said. Why did you go to the great world of CND when you were in such a powerful world? Qin Yang asked. In the past, when the 10 galaxies were independent, they were not so powerful. When the 10 galaxies were united and the qi of ancient chaos was connected, the complete Tao of heaven and earth began to be born. Otherwise, ancient chaos could not be compared to the immortal emperor in terms of luck and spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It would not be able to catch up in a short time. However, that does not mean much to us. The supreme Tao of heaven is the key. Chen Hao smiled and said, when I step into the Hongmeng domain, you can cultivate on your own. There are not many experts who can train you, but there are many places where you can train. After ancient chaos was united, many planets, forbidden lands, and ruins revealed clues. There is also the most powerful ancient chaos domain, which is mysterious and terrifying. Oh. Ruolan and I are suitable. Ruo Xian could not help but ask when she saw Chen Hao looking at her. According to the information gathered from the crowd before, she and Ruolan could be said to be near invincible existences in ancient chaos. Perhaps the only one who could contend against them was Yilan, who once looked down on the immortal emperor's boundless thousand world and stood above the Star River King. After all, Yilan had been imprisoned for so many years. Therefore, before coming to ancient chaos, they felt that the greater thousand realms of ancient chaos held no attraction for them. They had only come here because of Chen Hao and Chen Hao's lesser immortal realm. But now, the highest heavenly Tao of ancient chaos had given them a pleasant surprise. But that was probably the highest heavenly Tao. The ancient chaos desolation region is the area where the great war of the immortals, gods, and devils took place. Of course, it is also the core area of the ancient chaos. It has a total of 10 layers. The first layer is the weakest, and the 10th layer is the strongest. Before I went to the great world of CND, I went there to train for 1,000 years, but I stopped at the second layer. The second level already has the divine sense of a true immortal king. I don't know how strong the later levels are, but I'm sure you'll be satisfied, right? Chen Hao said. Chen Hao's words shocked Ruo Xian and Ruolan. Ancient chaos was much more mysterious and powerful than they had expected. Brother, when you go to the Hongmeng region, we also want to go to the ancient chaos region. Chen Nan said. But let's solve the problem of Master Yilan first. Let's go, everyone come in first. Chen Hao once again brought everyone into the space in his mind. His figure flashed, and in a short while, he arrived at the top of the sacred palace from the second heaven. Xiaofeng. When Chen Hao quietly appeared in the sky above the sacred palace's core square, the others, whose senses were not blocked, immediately cried out in surprise in Chen Hao's mind. Then, they all looked at Si Xian, who was beside them. It's Xiaofeng. Sister Si Xian, look, he's almost exactly the same as you. It's just that his aura is a bit weaker, and his temperament is completely different. Chen Yan and the others said. Xiaofeng, haha, he doesn't seem to be as strong as me now, right? Ahem, sister-in-law Si Xian, I'm not talking about you. Lan Feng hugged his Dao partner Shui Lan's waist and said smugly. However, when he saw Si Xian's gaze, he immediately shrunk his neck. Ha, everyone laughed, and they all thought of Lan Feng's embarrassing incident. Now, it seemed that Lan Feng had truly let it go since he could say such words in public. Si Xian, is this your third anima? Ruo Xian's eyes lit up. Very good, her state of mind isn't any worse than yours. Her foundation is also very good. Moreover, I can feel that she's almost completely independent. The effects of your fusion will be very good, perhaps. Si Xian smiled faintly. She didn't have the pain that Ruo Xian and Chen Hao had. Her fusion with Xiaofeng was imperative, and there wouldn't be any flaws in her state of mind. This was because Xiaofeng had truly grown up step by step, and was an existence that was completely equal to her. After the fusion, neither of them would disappear, and neither of them would affect the other. The only difference was Chen Hao. Now, because of Si Xian's transformation, it was completely gone. The situation doesn't look good. Every camp has an extremely powerful aura. Aside from Hao, even we can't contend against them. Chen Shui said with a frown. If it's just combat strength, then it's fine. We're not necessarily weak. However, once they activate the power of their godheads, we won't be able to contend against them. Qing Yang said. Miao Xian and Ning Jing also nodded. The previous ranking competition of the great world of CND was the best proof. Even the weakest soul of all things, Wei Wufa, wasn't someone they could contend against when he activated his godhead. This was an innate gap that couldn't be bridged. Of course, this didn't represent potential and future. The soul of all things was merely borrowing the power of his godhead from his previous life. The power that didn't belong to him now was also considered an external force. In the original 10 galaxies of the ancient chaos boundless world, reincarnated soul of all things had emerged in recent years. Each galaxy had at least 7 or 8 reincarnated soul of all things. At most, the tyrant race and god race had as many as 60 reincarnated soul of all things. Moreover, each and every one of them had heaven-defying talent and astonishing strength. In the eyes of the various powerhouses, they weren't any weaker than the killing god Qinhao. In fact, they were even stronger. It was also because of this reason that the 10 galaxies became restless again. It was fine if they were weak and were dominated by the vast universe galaxy, but they also had reincarnated soul of all things, and they were even stronger. How could they let the vast universe galaxy do whatever they wanted? Of course, they couldn't violate the rare unification situation and the original integration of the tokens and signed contract. Moreover, they also recognized the huge changes after the unification of the ancient chaos boundless world, so it was impossible for them to split again. However, the position of the ruler could still be competed for. This was something that had been agreed upon when the council was established. Therefore, even Yilan, who was the strongest in martial arts, couldn't stop this from happening. At this moment, it was the competition between the human race and the tyrants. The Grand Mist Supremacy Realm and the Daluo Golden Wonderland were both eligible to participate. This rule was set because of the soul of all things, because all the souls of all things were the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Xiao Feng of the human race. It's really teacher Si Xian's clone. I can confirm it just by looking at her. Her aura is very strong, but unfortunately, in front of the soul of all things, even if she's one realm higher, it's still not enough. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Book Number 32766692. I am the master of all worlds. Only I am the master of all worlds. This was another masterpiece after the Endless Dantian. If you like it, please take a look. Thank you. Chapter 1494. While the crowd was buzzing with discussion, Qinhao appeared directly in front of the vast universe galaxy's camp. His sudden appearance should have attracted a lot of attention and shock. However, the people around clearly saw him, but they acted as if they didn't see him. It was as if Qinhao had always been there. Even the reincarnations of more than 10 celestial emperors of the human clan didn't notice him. Such a mysterious divine art surprised everyone in Qinhao's mind. Qinhao didn't hide his aura. The only thing he did was disguise his appearance. This was inevitable. Otherwise, no matter how mysterious Qinhao's divine art was, it would be useless. His appearance was exactly the same as the statue in the center of the square. Who wouldn't recognize him? How could they not be surprised? But Face, Albua, what? But Face, who was nervously staring at Xiao Feng, suddenly froze. Since he had become a core warrior of Ao Tian, who dared to call him by his nickname? Even Huyan Albua, the first king, and other brothers called him Brother Dong in front of others. Everyone else had to respectfully call him Brother Dog when they saw him. At this moment, someone actually called him by his nickname in front of everyone. However, it was only for a moment. But Face suddenly looked at the person beside him with shock and excitement. You! God, boss, but Face and Huyan Albua almost lost their voices at the same time. They looked in shock at the young man who had suddenly appeared between them. However, they didn't feel anything at all and didn't know who he was. However, the familiar voice was not unfamiliar to them. If it wasn't their boss, who else could it be? However, as soon as they opened their mouths, they were stopped by Qinhao. They didn't say anything. What are the specific rules of this competition? Qinhao looked at the two excited people and smiled slightly. He patted their shoulders heavily with his left and right hands and spoke through soundless communication. Although Buttface tried his best to control himself, he was still so excited that tears streamed down his face. He was simple and honest and didn't know how to hide his feelings at all, let alone Brother Tianxi, whom he had followed since childhood. Huyan Aobo was also excited, but not to the point where he was speechless like Buttface. When he heard Qin Hao's question, he hurriedly spoke through soundless communication, "Boss, why are you back? We missed you so much." The rules of this competition were very simple. Each galaxy would send out 100 people. Either the Daluo Golden Wonderland or the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm would be allowed to participate. The strongest would be determined. It's like this. Through Huyan Aobo's explanation, Qin Hao understood the process and rules of the competition. Although it sounded complicated, it was actually very simple. First, the 10 major galaxies would draw lots, from 1 to 10. Then, the first and second galaxies would send out their first cultivator to compete. The cultivator who won would continue to compete, while the cultivator who lost would have to send out another cultivator from the other galaxies. As for the contestants who won the first round, if they lost the second round, their star systems did not need to send people up the stage. They would send people according to their star system's serial number. For example, if contestant A from the first galaxy and contestant B from the second galaxy had a duel, if A won, then the second galaxy would have to send contestant C to continue the duel. If A kept winning, then the second galaxy would have to keep sending contestants. If Galaxy A lost after the second round, Galaxy 1 would not need to send anyone up to the stage. It would be Galaxy 3's turn to send someone. And so on and so forth. Boss, our current situation is not optimistic. The tyrants are too strong. They have 61 spirits of all things reincarnated as immortal emperors. Spirits of all things, boss, you don't know. In the past few hundred years, many of them have emerged in our chaotic grand thousand worlds. There are at least a few hundred of them, and this does not include those who did not join the major galaxies or went to the Shifang territory. Yes, the spirits of all things are really too strong. However, our vast universe galaxy only has about 10 of them. The tyrants and the Protoss have about 60 of them. Look, after we entered the arena, we lost 15 rounds in a row. Even Xiao Feng had to enter the arena early. Brother Tianxi, it's good that you're back. You're now at the peak of the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, right? Nonsense, we didn't even notice when Boss appeared beside us. It was as if he was here from the beginning. What kind of remarkable power is this? It's not just the Supreme of Hongmeng. Boss, don't tell me you're already a Dao Severing Perfected Immortal? Oh no, that must be it. You're not qualified to participate. Huyan Aobo said as he looked at Qin Hao with a tragic expression. Huyan Aobo didn't think that Qin Hao's remarkable power of appearing beside them was something that the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm could not do. After all, Qin Hao really appeared beside them without hiding. However, not only the two of them, but even the spirits of all things nearby and the cultivators behind them didn't react at all. They all felt as if he had been there all along. This was really incredible. Therefore, Huyan Aobo was almost certain that Qin Hao had already reached the Dao Severing Perfected Immortal. That's right, it's over. Then I'm afraid we're really going to lose control. I was still thinking of letting Brother Tianxi take my place and fight in the arena and teach them a lesson. The simple and honest Buttface felt that Huyan Aobo's guess was definitely right. He scratched his head and said gloomily. Who said I've reached the Dao Severing Perfected Immortal? Qin Hao was speechless. Ah. So boss, you're from the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm? No. Qin Hao smiled slightly. Boss, you're too abnormal. How long have you been gone? You're already a real celestial king. This is really incredible. Brother Tianxi, you're amazing. Buttface also said in shock. Fuck. I'm still the Daluo Golden Wonderland, okay? Qin Hao was really speechless. The way he appeared here was indeed not something that an ordinary master could do. Even a real celestial king would find it difficult. However, how long had he been gone? These two guys were too daring. No way. This time, it was Buttface and Huyen Aobu's turn to be dumbfounded. That's the truth. Well, since I'm back, you don't have to worry. However, the spirits of all things are not something that you can defeat. Buttface, I'll take your place. Yes, Brother Tianxi. Boss, you're awesome. Boss, are you the only one back? Where are the sisters-in-law, Xiao Nan, and Brother Pan? They're all back. Here. Don't tell them that I'm back for the time being. Chen Hao smiled slightly and pointed to his head. The two immediately rubbed their palms excitedly again. Yes, yes, let's give them a surprise. Ha, ha. Don't tell me that Senior Yilan doesn't know. Huyen Aobu looked at Yilan, who was full of worry on the rostrum, and asked. Except for the two of you, no one knows. Boss, you're really, really abnormal. You passed through the seal of the holy temple silently, and Senior Yilan didn't even notice. Stop flattering me. Let's watch the competition. Chen Hao said as he slapped the back of Huyen Aobu's head. Buttface just smiled foolishly. His previous worries had completely disappeared. Brother Tianxi was his reassurance. Even if he knew that Brother Tianxi was only the Daluo Jingxian at this moment and would be facing many powerful spirits of all things, he didn't have the slightest doubt that Brother Tianxi would win the final victory. Chapter 1495. Xiao Feng, the immortality legend of the human tribe is Si Xian's life, right? Not bad. Whether it's your state of mind, will, or physical body, they're all very good. Unfortunately, you're still nothing in front of me. Are you going to admit defeat, or do you want me to attack? In the arena, the tyrant's disciple, who had won 15 rounds in a row, narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Feng with a burning gaze. It was as if he wanted to see through Xiao Feng, and he did not hide the lascivious look in his eyes. You talk too much nonsense. Xiao Feng's face turned cold, and she immediately attacked. Her majestic and terrifying physical strength and inextinguishable aura burst out. Whoosh! At the same time, Xiao Feng's violent attack contained a desolate aura that made one's heart palpitate. It swept across the area, and in an instant, all the cultivators in the martial arts practice field clearly felt a deathly stillness. All the vitality quickly became desolate. Not bad. Others did not know, but Chen Hao saw this scene and nodded slightly. Previously, when he was in the Mountain of Corpses and Sea of Blood, he had integrated the three major immortal scriptures of the chaotic Great Thousand World, but it did not help Xiao Feng to comprehend and cultivate. However, at this moment, Xiao Feng had obviously comprehended the Earth Desolation scripture to an extremely high level. Moreover, in terms of absolute strength, she was not inferior to the tyrant's cultivator at all. Huh? You've learned the Immortal Emperor's Lost technique? It's not bad, but unfortunately, it's just an ordinary Immortal Emperor's Lost technique. It's just a superficial understanding of the primary principle of the Great Tao. Boom! Although the tyrant's cultivator was slightly surprised, he was not afraid at all. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. It seemed slow, but it was actually fast. In an instant, it condensed into an extremely mysterious rune and charged toward Xiao Feng. Rumble. In the terrifying explosion of energy, the tyrant's cultivator did not retreat. Instead, his figure swayed and he approached Xiao Feng like a ghost. Since you want to fight, I'll play with you. Chi. The tyrant's cultivator's hands suddenly turned into sharp and ethereal claws and attacked Xiao Feng's plump breasts from an extremely tricky angle. Shameless. Xiao Feng was furious and suddenly retreated. At the same time, she launched another fierce attack. Unfortunately, Xiao Feng, who seemed to be on par with the tyrants in terms of strength and aura, was easily forced into a fluster by the other party. In a moment, he was completely at a disadvantage. Moreover, everyone could tell that the tyrant's cultivators had no intention of defeating Xiao Feng as soon as possible. Instead, they were teasing him. Xiao Feng, admit defeat. Yi Lan, whose brows were tightly knitted, couldn't bear to see Xiao Feng being humiliated, and directly ordered in an unquestionable manner. Although her opponent hadn't succeeded yet, Darkwind's face was still flushed red with anger. As she heard her master's words, she was extremely unwilling. If she were to admit defeat, then in vast universe galaxy, besides the 16 reincarnated immortal emperors, no one else would be able to stop her opponent. And, these 16 people were the hope of vast universe galaxy. The competition had just begun, and the other 8 galaxies hadn't even stepped onto the stage yet. How could she allow them to step onto the stage? But if she didn't listen to her master, what she would face might not be as simple as a defeat. At the moment when Xiao Feng was caught between a rock and a hard place and was filled with unwillingness, a surprised expression suddenly appeared on her face. Soon after, it disappeared. Practically no one noticed Xiao Feng's momentary abnormality. But at this moment, Xiao Feng said, "Master, it's fine. Don't worry." Qi. As soon as Xiao Feng finished speaking, before Yi Lan could say anything, her figure suddenly trembled and directly disappeared on the spot. This caused the arrogant and domineering tyrant's cultivator who was determined to win to miss. Great teleportation technique? Amazing. To be able to comprehend to such a realm, it's very, very amazing. Ha ha ha, Xiao Feng, I realize that I'm liking you more and more. Be my cultivation companion. With my dual cultivation, I guarantee that you'll step into the immortal emperor realm. Although the tyrant's cultivator couldn't see Xiao Feng's figure for a while, he could completely sense her aura. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry. Moreover, as he said, Xiao Feng's talent really made him tempted. She's indeed an immortal legend of vast universe galaxy. This is just one of her lives, and it's not her original body. If her original body fuses into one, her talent will definitely not be mediocre even in the immortal world. If she can be my cultivation companion, it'll be great too. This woman is mine for sure. No one can snatch her away from me. At this moment, not only the tyrant's cultivator who was fighting Xiao Feng, but many of the spirits of all creation present had the same thought. Qi. However, at this moment, an extremely sharp sword light appeared out of thin air in front of the tyrant's cultivator. It carried endless mysteries and the indestructible ultimacy that was many times more powerful than before. It triggered the Tao law of heaven and earth and violently attacked. Go to hell. Rumble, a cold and delicate voice rang out. The sword light had already pierced the tyrant's cultivator's glabella and exploded with a loud bang. Ah! A shrill scream followed. How is this possible? How is this possible? I'm going to kill you, bitch. You destroyed my physical body and soul. A dazzling golden godhead flew out from the tyrant's cultivator's destroyed physical body and soul. It roared wildly and was unable to restrain its anger. At this moment, the pressure of the godhead spread wildly and shocked countless people. Suppress it. Xiao Feng, who was obviously overwhelmed by the power of the divinity, instantly turned pale. At this moment, she gritted her teeth as if she had exhausted the last of her strength. Suddenly, she took out a golden rune and threw it at the tyrant's cultivator's divinity. Buzz! In an instant, the golden rune bloomed with endless mysterious and ancient rune light. It sealed the sky and locked down the earth. It was like a huge mountain that directly pressed on the godhead. Accompanied by a shrill scream, the pressure of the godhead instantly receded like the tide until it disappeared. Immediately after, the golden rune slowly sank into Xiao Feng's glabella. It was a long story, but in fact, everything happened in a flash. No one had expected such an outcome. Even Yi Lan's eyes widened in shock. What the hell was that? When did his disciple have a golden rune that could suppress the godhead? When did she cultivate the great teleportation technique to such a high level? She could even simulate and hide her aura, causing the opponent to misperceive her. Yi Lan, who knew his disciple the best, could not believe his eyes at this moment. Xiao Feng of the human clan wins. The members of the 10 Lives arbitration team had to announce Xiao Feng's victory. This was agreed before the competition. The godhead of the soul of all creatures was indestructible. As long as the physical body and soul were destroyed, it would be considered a failure. Xiao Feng! Xiao Feng! Xiao Feng! Cheers erupted from the vast universe galaxy's camp. No one expected Xiao Feng to be able to defeat the soul of all creatures. No one expected Xiao Feng to have a golden rune that could suppress the godhead. However, this was not important. A victory was what they needed the most. Wait! Just as Xiao Feng was about to jump out of the arena, the tyrant suddenly stood up and stopped her. Leave Lu Han's godhead. It belongs to the tyrants. Chapter 1496. Xiao Feng frowned slightly but didn't say anything. He looked at Yi Lan, who was in the middle of the platform. This wasn't agreed before the competition. The winner is king and the loser is a bandit. His godhead and all his belongings naturally belong to the winner, Yi Lan said in a low voice. Brother Yi, you've gone too far. How can the godhead be compared to his belongings? The godhead is Lu Han, and Lu Han is the godhead. For the competition, the godhead is just him, who is seriously injured. He's a member of the tyrants, so shouldn't it belong to us? What do you think, counselors? The tyrants' leader said. That's right. Counselor Wu is right. Lu Han's godhead should belong to the tyrants. Brother Yi, you're wrong to do that. We know that the human clan has too few spirits of all creation, but you can't snatch others, right? Immediately, the two counselors from the Earth Demon clan and the Ghost clan agreed. The two of them stood on the tyrant's side without hesitation. Obviously, they had already decided on this matter. The tyrants had 61 spirits of all creation, and they had received accurate information that one of them was a top figure even in the immortal world. It could be said that the tyrants had almost 100% control of the vast thousand primordial world this time. Moreover, from then on, it would be difficult for anyone to shake their position. As for them, who were relatively weaker, if they joined the tyrants now, they would undoubtedly benefit from the distribution of resources in the future. Snatch? My disciple was lucky enough to win and subdued the godhead. That's equivalent to killing Lu Han in the battle. That's her spoils of war. How is that snatching? Cut the crap. If you're not convinced, you can fight with me. Don't forget that I'm still the acting ruler of the vast thousand primordial world. Do you really think that you can dominate in the future just because you have more spirits of all creation? Not to mention that the current spirits of all creation is only in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Even if they advance to the Immortal King realm in the future, our counselor, Chen Hao, will still be in existence that they can't surpass. Humph. Yi Lan said domineeringly. Ha. Since Lu Han's godhead has been suppressed by Xiao Feng, it's reasonable for it to belong to Xiao Feng. However, Brother Yi, regarding the matter of Grim Reaper Chen Hao, Brother Yi shouldn't jump to conclusions. Everything depends on strength. If you can summon him back and defeat them, then we'll admit defeat. Otherwise, anything you say will be useless. Previously, his talent and potential were indeed unrivaled in the ancient chaos Great Thousand Worlds, and he indeed shouldn't be an ordinary spirit of all living things, but at best, he was just not ordinary. To be precise, none of us felt the pressure of his godhead. But now, at this point, I can clearly tell you, and of course, your galaxies as well, that one of the spirits of all things of the Protoss is the reincarnation of a celestial venerable level expert. Even in the immortal realm, he is a top existence. No matter how strong God of Slaughter Chen Hao is, how can he be compared to the reincarnation of a heavenly venerable? What? When the Protoss ruler saw that the Earth Demon race and the Phantom race were on the side of the tyrants, he did not hesitate and directly revealed the powerful trump card of the Protoss race. This shocked Yi Lan and the other rulers of the major galaxies. The only ones who could still maintain their composure were the powerful tyrants. Humph, fine. Since you say so, then so be it. Don't regret it in the next round. The disciples of the tyrants will definitely get back 10 or 100 times more. Oh, no, you humans only have 16 spirits of all things. It's impossible to get 100 times more, ha ha ha. The ruler of the tyrants said unhappily, but he could only give up. Duel with Yilan. He did not have the strength to do so. Let the competition continue. Yilan said with an embarrassed expression. The situation was pressing. Yilan could not do anything about the powerful tyrants saying such threatening words. The only thing he could do was to remind the disciples of the human race to be careful. He was already mentally prepared to lose control of the ancient chaos Great Thousand Worlds temporarily. There was no need to let the spirits of all things of the human race fight with their lives on the line. Qi. Xiao Feng jumped out of the arena directly. Xiao Feng won this round, so she could withdraw. The tyrants, who had won 15 rounds in a row before losing, did not need to send anyone up to the arena. It was the turn of the 3 and 4 galaxies to enter the arena. After Xiao Feng came down from the arena, she went directly to Qin Hao and squeezed Huyan Aobo out of the way. She turned her small face and stared straight at the disguised Qin Hao. My good disciple, you're back. Xiao Feng said telepathically. Little girl, don't call me that. Qin Hao pretended to stare fiercely at Xiao Feng. Alright, since you're so powerful, I won't make things difficult for you. Sigh, I've worked very hard. I always thought that I could surpass her, but I didn't expect her to be so strong. She's not just a little bit stronger. What's more, she's in the same realm. Xiao Feng was able to kill the spirits of all creatures of the tyrants. Naturally, it was not her own ability. Instead, Xi Xian's original body had used the mystery of the 9 lives mystic technique to integrate directly into her body. Xi Xian was able to temporarily replace her in the battle against the tyrant's cultivators. Their experiences in the Immortal Emperor's Great Thousand Worlds, King Ying's special training, and especially the time they spent in Qin Hao's mind, caused Xi Xian and the others' strength to soar by leaps and bounds. The freakish spacetime laws and the environment of the minor immortal world made it impossible for them to progress slowly. Therefore, in addition to attacking the opponent when he was unprepared, he could destroy the opponent's physical body and soul abode without the opponent taking the initiative to use the Godhead. Only the golden runes were naturally condensed by Qin Hao. All of this was within Qin Hao's calculations. However, Xi Xian could not withstand the Godhead's Godhead, even the weakest immortal emperor Godhead. This was an irreparable gap. How long has it been since you stepped into the Supreme of Hongmeng? Of course, Xi Xian is indeed very strong. You will be even stronger after the fusion. You have advantages that she doesn't have, and she also has advantages that you are stronger in. Fusion. Is that still me? Ha! But it's not up to me. If she wants to control my body, she controls it. If she wants to integrate into me, she integrates into me. If she wants to give me a chance to speak, I'm talking to you. Everything is under her control, Xiao Feng said dejectedly. All these years, or to be exact, ever since she quarreled with the original Xi Xian because of Qin Hao, she had been cultivating crazily and doing her best to improve herself. However, she now realized that the gap between her and the original Xi Xian had only narrowed. Combat power, state of mind, will, Tao laws, and so on made her feel like she was looking up at a tall mountain. Perhaps she would never be able to catch up to the original Xi Xian in this lifetime. In such a situation, she could not help but feel discouraged. That's not it. Xi Xian can't control you at all. Just now, the situation was critical. I was afraid that you would not accept her, so I played a role. Otherwise, you and Xi Xian would be equal. Chapter 1497. Qin Hao paused slightly and continued, moreover, you don't have to worry. After the fusion, you won't be you. You grew up step by step under equal conditions. After the fusion, you will be her and she will be you. After all, you two don't have any conflict at all. Perhaps. Now, your words are biased towards her. Good disciple, forget it, fusion is fusion. But before the fusion, please allow me to despise her once. Original body, I despise you. Humph, no matter how hard your mouth is, in the end, didn't you fall in love with the one I love? He. See you later, or will there be no chance to see you again, Chen Hao? I don't know. I hope you didn't lie to me. Damn girl. Can't wait anymore. Don't think that I can't feel your excitement. What are you pretending for? You obviously want to fuse with me, but you're still so stubborn. However, you'd better jump around a little longer. Now isn't the time to truly fuse. Xi Xian's voice sounded in Xiao Feng's mind. She seemed to be abnormally angry. This wasn't Xi Xian's style. From this, it could be seen that she was her greatest enemy. Otherwise, how could Xi Xian lose her composure so easily? Miss Xiao, congratulations, congratulations. I didn't expect your strength to be so strong. I heard that this life of yours is just an avatar. At this time, a cultivator not far from Chen Hao and Xiao Feng came directly in front of Xiao Feng and said with a smile. This person's aura and strength were the strongest among the 16 spirits of all living things in vast universe galaxy. Chen Hao's abnormal perception had already evaluated the spirits of all living things in vast universe galaxy when he just came over. Yes, what's wrong? Xiao Feng smiled faintly. Is your original body strong? Much stronger than me. Xiao Feng didn't hide and said bluntly. Then you two will have to fuse in the end, right? Naturally. After the fusion, will you still be you? Hearing the other party's words, Xiao Feng frowned slightly and said, Su Wensheng, if you have something to say, just say it directly. No need to beat around the bush. Alright, Miss Xiao. The path of cultivation is a long one, and if you're able to find a Tao companion that appreciates you and is in love with you all along the way, then it would undoubtedly be much more colorful. I like women like you. If you agree to become my Tao companion, then I can allow you to replace your main body and take control of your quintessence. You'll advance hand in hand with me and become an immortal companion that heads to the immortal dimension together. The wisest of all things called Su Wensheng had a gentle appearance to begin with. At this moment, his white robe was spotless, and his face carried a faint smile as he stared at Xiao Feng, filled with confidence. To be honest, this would be extremely lethal to any woman. After all, he was the spirit of all things, and he was a top figure amongst the spirit of all things. Becoming his Tao companion was practically equivalent to obtaining the ticket to the immortal dimension, so how could anyone not be moved? Many female human cultivators looked at Xiao Feng enviously. They were just short of shouting, together. In Su Wensheng's opinion, since he said so, Xiao Feng would definitely be flattered and throw herself into his arms. But, hearing such a direct and conditional confession, Xiao Feng was first stunned, then surprised, and then frowned. Finally, to everyone's bafflement, she actually looked at Chen Hao beside her. However, at this moment, no one knew that this man was the god of slaughter, Chen Hao. At the same time, it was only at this moment that everyone felt a little strange. Who was this man? Those who were able to stand at the forefront were all one of the 100 contestants representing the vast universe galaxy, but everyone had actually forgotten who this man was. In fact, it wasn't that everyone had forgotten, but that they simply didn't know there was an additional person. Who is this? He's obviously been there all along, so how come I don't recognize him? Could it be that he's the spirit of all things hidden in our vast universe galaxy? It seems so. He seems to be very familiar with General Dong and General Huyan. Strange, I don't have any impression of him at all. In the midst of everyone's surprised voices, Yi Lan, who had been watching this scene from the rostrum, also looked at Chen Hao with a surprised expression. The more he looked, the more surprised he was, and the brighter his eyes became. Sorry, thank you very much for your appreciation of me, but I am his person. Everything has to be decided by him, so you should ask him. To everyone's surprise, Xiao Feng actually said this. His person. Who is he? Isn't Xiao Feng the person of our boss, god of slaughter, Chen Hao? This is news spread by one of Proud Heaven's core generals. Many people were shocked. Although the relationship between Wind Breeze and Qin Hao hadn't been established in the slightest, Wind Breeze had come out of seclusion in recent years. In order to ensure that Wind Breeze didn't get harassed, the core generals of Proud Heaven had intentionally spread the word that Wind Breeze and Qin Hao were related. How could they let their sister-in-law be harassed by random people? Who are you? Su Wenxing frowned slightly, looking at Qin Hao with a proud gaze, and asked in a deep voice. He didn't expect Xiao Feng to reject him so straightforwardly, and in such a way. However, there was one thing he was sure of. The man in front of him, whether it was his aura or appearance, was too ordinary. How could he be compared to him? This was simply an insult. Chi. However, just as Qin Hao smiled and was about to say something, a stream of light suddenly streaked across the sky. To everyone's surprise, Yilan suddenly appeared beside Qin Hao. What was even more shocking was that Yilan directly bowed and said, "Yilan respectfully welcomes the return of the Assembly President, God of Slaughter, Qin Hao to Ancient Chaos." Boom! Yilan respectfully welcomes the return of the Assembly President, God of Slaughter, Qin Hao to Ancient Chaos. Yilan's voice was like a thunderclap that resounded deafeningly through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, causing everyone to be unable to react. Even Qin Hao himself was slightly stunned. How did he recognize it? It shouldn't be. Welcome, boss. Welcome back, God of Slaughter, Qin Hao. Welcome back, Assembly President. Although the members of Proud Heaven didn't recognize Qin Hao as the killing god, they immediately dropped to their knees and kowtowed, trembling with excitement. That was especially true of the cultivators who had followed Qin Hao in the past. They were so moved that they were choking with emotion. As they thought about Qin Hao's past, streams of faith power surged through them. But this time, it was as if some sort of god-devil had possessed them, causing their quintessence, energy, and auras to rise to new heights. Boom! Under the impact of the majestic river of faith, the power of faith that Qin Hao had been suppressing finally erupted. Suddenly, with his glabella as the core, a strong golden holy light gushed out from his body, rising uncontrollably and forming 9 halos around him. It was as if the Buddha had descended, and a vision of heaven and earth appeared. It was as if the sound of the Great Way had come from the 9th heaven, reverberating in the depths of everyone's hearts. God of Slaughter, Qin Hao. It really is God of Slaughter, Qin Hao. What? He's God of Slaughter, Qin Hao. What terrifying power of faith! Who could possibly stand up to him? Chapter 1498. Numerous gazes filled with shock and horror looked at Qin Hao, who was slowly rising under the power of faith, and their hearts were filled with shock. Of course, those who felt this way were cultivators who had no faith in Qin Hao. This is Qin Hao, the God of Slaughter. What a strong power of faith! His influence is indeed spread throughout ancient chaos. Every galaxy has a lot of believers. Almost everyone in the vast universe galaxy is his believer. Strange, I don't sense the aura of the spirit of all living things on him. Really? I didn't sense it either. If he isn't the spirit of all living things, it's useless no matter how strong the power of faith is. Yeah, don't worry. Even if he's the spirit of all living things, can he be stronger than Lu Tianyan of the Tyrants? Although some of the spirits of all living things were slightly surprised by Qin Hao's influence in ancient chaos, they didn't really take it to heart. Although the power of faith was strong, it couldn't exert much of an advantage under the pressure of a godhead. Especially if the godhead was of a high grade, it could be directly intimidated. Qin Hao was slightly surprised when he sensed the majestic and terrifying power of faith. Receiving faith face-to-face and receiving it across time and space were two completely different concepts. Qin Hao could clearly feel the heart of every devout believer and hear the voice of every believer, including Yilan. When Yilan suddenly bowed, Qin Hao knew that there was no way for him to avoid this. He had to directly take over the current situation. This was Yilan's trust in him. If he couldn't even resolve the current problem even after returning, wouldn't that mean that he temporarily lost control of ancient chaos? Therefore, Chen Hao calmly accepted everyone's greetings and opened up the source of faith, connecting with the power of faith of countless devout believers and feeding them back. Chen Hao knew very well that this was his chance to act cool. Moreover, he had to act cool. He had to make those who believed in him more firmly and become more devout. He had to shock those who didn't believe in him and leave behind the seeds of faith. This was the awareness that a superior person must have. Therefore, Chen Hao didn't hesitate to activate the endless Tao law and integrate the profound meaning of the profound Buddhist scriptures. Moreover, the activation became stronger and stronger. Plop. 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 While many cultivators and spirits of all things were still discussing Chen Hao, something that shocked them happened again. Some young cultivators who did not bow at first, which meant that they did not believe in killing God Chen Hao, actually began to kneel down one after another. In an instant, their faces were filled with sincere prayers as they became believers of killing God Chen Hao. Not good. The profound meaning of the supreme Buddhist secret technique, the art of great purification, is actually contained in his Sanskrit mantra of the great Tao. Controllers, why aren't you stopping him? If this continues, most of the people here will become his followers. Almost at the same time, Lu Tianyan, the spirit of all things from the tyrants, and Shen Tuoling, the spirit of all things from the Protoss, both spoke loudly. They did not hold back at all and directly resounded throughout the entire martial arts arena. God of slaughter Chen Hao. Chen Hao. As soon as Lu Tianyan and Shen Tuoling finished speaking, the controllers of the tyrants, the Protoss, and several other galaxies directly spoke. Although they were only calling out Chen Hao, their voices were filled with their strongest Tao law and resounded throughout the world, waking everyone up from the Sanskrit mantra of the great Tao that they had just believed in. Chen Hao, why didn't you say anything when you came back? If you had known earlier, you wouldn't have made such a big fuss. The Protoss controller directly soared into the sky and rose to a height higher than Chen Hao. He looked down at Chen Hao and said with a fake smile. Humph. Chi. Chen Hao snorted coldly and took a step forward. No one could sense his aura, let alone see his figure clearly, but he had already arrived in front of the Protoss controller. Boom. At this moment, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly erupted from between Chen Hao's eyebrows. Ah! The God Race Overlord suddenly cried out in alarm. It was as if a mountain had suddenly smashed into his body. There was no room for him to resist at all. With a loud crash, he fell to the ground. When everyone saw the scene in front of them, they were all dumbfounded. Even all the spirits of all living things present were dumbfounded. How dare a sixth heaven-severing Tao true immortal act so arrogantly in front of me? If it weren't for your status as a counselor and your previous contributions, I would have crippled you right now. Chen Hao said arrogantly and disdainfully as he stepped on the Protoss controller. The boundless blood energy, the terrifying power of faith, the terrifyingly powerful pressure, and the boundless profound Tao laws had all merged into one with the heavens and the earth. At this moment, Chen Hao was the heavens and the earth, and the heavens and the earth were Chen Hao. His absolute strength had far surpassed the shackles of his own realm. At this moment, he was like a god, carrying out punishment on behalf of the heavens. Token. Shameless, Chen Hao. What kind of ability are you using the ancient chaos token? The Protoss controller's face was full of humiliation. The dignified number one of the Protoss was actually being stepped on by a Daluo Jinxian. Even if the other party was killing God Chen Hao, it still made him lose face. However, it was only at this moment that he remembered how terrifying killing God Chen Hao was. Back then, he was already so terrifying. Now that he had improved, how could he compare to this monster? Some people could never be measured by their realm. Killing God Chen Hao was no doubt this kind of person. However, at this moment, he was not convinced because he could clearly feel the suppression of heaven and earth. That was the supreme Tao law, an ability that only the ancient chaos token, which had merged with the tokens of the 10 major galaxies, had. As the recognized controller back then, Chen Hao had the ability to use it. Ancient chaos token. It's with old man. However, as soon as the Protoss controller finished speaking, Yilan took out the ancient chaos token that he had been keeping. Impossible, how is this possible? The controllers of the Tyrant race, Sky Demon race, Insect race, and other galaxies all sucked in a breath of cold air. Killing God Chen Hao was only in the Daluo Golden Wonderland now. Even if he borrowed the power of faith, how could he be so powerful that he could step on a 6th heaven true immortal stage Protoss controller without being able to move? Disperse for me. Chi. Suddenly, the Protoss soul of all things, Shen Tuoling, the strongest soul of all things in the Protoss race and a heavenly venerable level soul of all things, stepped out from the crowd. A bright blood-red light directly gushed out from between his eyebrows, illuminating the entire world. It was also at this moment that a kind of pressure that made everyone's soul tremble and not dare to resist directly acted on their soul and state of mind. The pressure of a heavenly venerable level Godhead. Boom! It was also at this moment that Chen Hao's power of faith suddenly weakened by a lot. The state of being one with millions of people was directly dispelled. As for Chen Hao, who was only in the Daluo Golden Wonderland, the amount of power of faith that he could control decreased by a lot. Heavenly venerable level Godhead pressure. Many of the Protoss race's soul of all things exclaimed in shock and retreated continuously. Chapter 1499. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Shen Tuoling. A god race heavenly venerable. That was an extreme Dao heavenly venerable Yang Shen, who was much stronger than an immortal Dao heavenly venerable. It was just that it was much easier for an extreme Dao heavenly venerable to advance. This was the price of an extreme Dao heavenly venerable being stronger than an extreme Dao heavenly venerable. At this moment, in everyone's eyes, the pressure of Shen Tuoling's heavenly venerable Godhead had cut off Chen Hao's power of heaven and earth. To be able to comprehend ancient chaos supreme Dao law, you have some skill. To be able to control such a huge amount of faith power is also very strong. Unfortunately, you are not the spirit of all living beings. In front of my Godhead, you are nothing but a chicken and a dog. Shen Tuoling looked at Chen Hao, whose Buddhist light had disappeared, his faith power weakened, and the power of heaven and earth receded. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Chen Hao. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked down at Chen Hao as he spoke. A reincarnated heavenly venerable of the immortal world. So strong. Too strong. A heavenly venerable is worthy of being a top existence in the immortal world. Just the pressure of his Godhead suppressed Chen Hao. Many people exclaimed in shock. However, no one noticed that although the cultivators who had joined Chen Hao's army of faith had lost the power of faith and stopped praying at this moment, their expressions were extremely calm. Their gazes towards Chen Hao were still filled with excitement and worship, and even a trace of madness. A chicken and a dog? Interesting. Chi. Chen Hao said with a faint smile. He didn't seem to be affected by Shen Tuoling's Godhead pressure at all. After speaking, his figure shook and disappeared on the spot. When he appeared once more, Chen Hao was already standing proudly on the arena. His tall and slender figure emanated sword insight and battle intent that shot into the sky, and his pitch-black eyes were like the most dazzling stars in the night sky as they slowly swept past all the masters and spirits of all things in the 10 galaxies. I'm right here. If you're not convinced, come one by one, or all together, it's fine. If you can defeat me, you can take control of ancient chaos. If you can't, die. No matter who it is. A calm, cold, but arrogant and domineering voice resounded in everyone's ears. When he finished speaking, there was no murderous intent, but the temperature of the entire martial arts practice field seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. Many cultivators, no matter which galaxy they were from, showed a look of horror. God of Slaughter Chen Hao. This was the true aura of the God of Slaughter Chen Hao. The God of Slaughter Chen Hao, who had once dominated the 10 Directions domain and the extraterritorial battlefield, had appeared once again. They, especially the cultivators who had witnessed the might of the God of Slaughter Chen Hao, felt a bone-piercing chill at this moment. It was as if they could see the scene of blood flowing like a river. Unfortunately, Chen Hao's words, Chen Hao's aura, and Chen Hao's gaze did not have the slightest effect on the spirits of all things present. They only felt annoyed. Arrogant. You're just a country bumpkin who isn't even the wisest of all living beings. How dare you be so arrogant? Idiot, I can beat you to death in a one-on-one fight, but you still want to fight in a group? Why don't you take a good look at yourself? Are you worthy? You're simply courting death. There's no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Brother Shen, let me take care of a moron like you. Swish. When a wisest of all living beings from the Shen clan with a powerful aura saw that Shen Tuoling was about to enter the arena, he took a step forward and was willing to be a pawn. An idiot who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Today, I, Li Feng, will let you know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. Who do you think you are, huh? After this cultivator stepped onto the stage, he introduced himself and looked as if he was about to explode the heavens. He roared at Chen Hao with his nostrils. Of course, he was not an idiot. He had seen Chen Hao's strength, so the moment he entered the arena, he had already released the pressure of his divine spark. He believed that relying on the suppression of the divine spark's pressure, he had no problem defeating Chen Hao. When facing Shen Tuoling previously, although Chen Hao did not have the slightest reaction to his pressure, in his opinion, Chen Hao was definitely pretending. Otherwise, he would not have teleported onto the arena and continued to be arrogant. Because I'm the god of slaughter, Chen Hao. Chen Hao's expression became calmer and colder as he said. Ha ha ha, in the 10 great galaxies, many wisest of all living beings laughed loudly, looking at Chen Hao as if looking at an idiot. What was the god of slaughter, Chen Hao? But Chen Hao's believers, brothers and sisters, Yi Lan, and the others, their blood boiled because of Chen Hao's calm and cold words. They believed in Chen Hao. How arrogant and domineering was this? I've seen arrogant people, but I've never seen someone as arrogant as you. Ha ha ha, go to hell. Boom. The god races Li Feng laughed loudly and suddenly urged the divine spark's pressure and his strongest strength with all his strength. At this moment, the blood energy that bloomed from his body seemed to pierce through the sky. An indescribably terrifying power and great Tao aura that was relative to his own realm bloomed from between his brows as he punched out. There was no gaudy, no complicated runes, only the most masculine, most powerful, and most simple charm of the great Tao. One technique to break all techniques. This move caused one exclamation after another, and it also made everyone understand that the god race's Li Feng's strength was one of the best even among the wisest of all living beings. He was only weaker than Shen Tuoling's level. Brother Li Feng, take it easy. Such an arrogant guy, don't kill him in one move. Let us also have a taste of it. God of slaughter Chen Hao, we're all so scared, okay? Ha ha ha. One of the wisest of all living beings from the god race shouted and was full of ridicule. However, they were really worried that Li Feng would kill Chen Hao in an instant. After all, since Chen Hao had appeared now, the competition couldn't continue according to the previous procedures. If he killed him, who would have a chance to show off? Hiss. But right at this moment, Chen Hao made a move. A chilly sword light flashed out from Chen Hao's hand. It didn't possess a formidable imposing aura, nor did it possess a dazzling glow, nor did it contain a profound sword Tao will. Similarly, it didn't seem to contain any profound Tao laws, yet it caused the hearts of everyone to jerk, open their eyes wide, and gasp. This cold sword light seemed to break through the laws of heaven and earth and the restraints of time and space. It jumped above the laws and was invulnerable. It easily broke through Li Feng's extremely terrifying attack, and it seemed to be extremely slow, but it approached the space between Li Feng's brows bit by bit, and then, it pierced through. It was like a slow motion. No matter how strong or weak their cultivation was, everyone saw it clearly and vividly. Bang! Li Feng's face was filled with terror, but he didn't have time to react before he turned into a bloody mist. Red and white parts flew everywhere, while the golden godhead was trying to escape. However, Chen Hao stretched out his hand and easily caught it in his palm like an inescapable net catching a bird. Besides the sounds of gasping, there was only deathly silence. Chapter 1500. Continue. Chen Hao looked calmly in the direction of the god race and said indifferently. There was no need for Chen Hao to deliberately pretend. With the effect of killing a chicken to warn the monkey, the deterrent power was already sufficient. The calmer he was, the more arrogant he seemed. The more the style of an expert was, and the stronger the deterrent power. At this time, apart from Shen Tuoling, who still dared to look directly at Chen Hao, no one dared to look directly at Chen Hao. Everyone avoided his gaze in fear and didn't dare to provoke him in the slightest. Wasn't it courting death if they continued to provoke him? Li Feng was one of the best among them, but in front of God of Slaughter Chen Hao, he couldn't withstand a single blow. Even if he used the pressure of his divine spark from the beginning, it had no effect on God of Slaughter Chen Hao. Moreover, at this moment, his divine spark was absorbed into Chen Hao's mind space without using any runes. Obviously, Chen Hao could easily suppress his divine spark by relying on his own strength. This was what terrified them the most. What, you don't dare? You, and the rest of you, don't you want to have a go? Chen Hao's mind was like tentacles that directly locked onto the nearly 10 spirits of all living beings of the god race, and he slightly hooked his hand as he spoke. These 10+ people were shockingly the ones who mocked Li Feng earlier. You don't even have this bit of backbone. Are you really spirits of all living beings? Seeing that none of them dared to answer, Chen Hao said disdainfully, weaklings. If no one challenges me within 10 minutes, I'll take it that you've given up control. Then sign a contract with me using the supreme laws of the immortal world. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. You're just spirits of all living beings. Don't take yourself too seriously. You're nothing in my eyes. Chen Hao said disdainfully. Is that so? You just killed Li Feng, whose strength was mediocre, and you think you're really invincible. You're a little strong, but it's only a little. What's there to be arrogant about? You want us to sign a contract? That's impossible. Chen Hao, don't push me too far. That's just digging your own grave. As soon as Chen Hao finished speaking, Shen Tuoling of the god race, Lu Tianyan of the tyrant race, and some other spirits of creation with stronger auras spoke one after another. Of course, it was impossible for Shen Tuoling and Lu Tianyan, who were reincarnated heavenly venerables, to admit defeat so easily. However, the others were forced by Chen Hao's words about signing a contract with the laws of the immortal world. Being temporarily weak did not mean that they would be weak in the future. After all, in this life, almost all of them had chosen the Tao that they had yearned for in their previous lives but were unable to reach. When the time came for them to merge with their original Tao, it would bring about even more changes. No one could predict what level they would reach, so how could they sign a contract? Chen Hao's actions were completely going too far, in their opinion. Otherwise, amongst the numerous spirits of all things, probably only Chen Tuoling, Lu Tianyan, and a few hidden spirits of all things would stand out and fight Chen Hao, whereas the others would choose to remain silent for now. You talk too much nonsense. Come one by one, or come together. If there's no one in 10 minutes, then sign the contract. If not, die. Chen Hao said proudly. Chen Hao's words made everyone look at Shen Tuoling of the god race and Lu Tianyan of the tyrant race. Both of them were heavenly venerables on the surface, and they were the two strongest spirits of all things. The terrifying power that Chen Hao had just displayed was definitely not something that ordinary spirits of all things could contend against. Therefore, the two of them naturally became the hope of many spirits of all things. No one was willing to be forced to sign a contract with the supreme laws of the immortal world. Shen Tuoling and Lu Tianyan looked at each other, both full of confidence and arrogance. Heavenly venerate Ling Tua, right? Heavenly venerate Yen, right? Do you want to go, or should I? Shen Tuoling smiled and transmitted his voice. The two of them had long sensed each other's auras and guessed each other's former identities through their names. The battle between you and me is the battle of the pinnacle. You don't want to be exposed before you meet me, and I don't want to be exposed before I meet you either. Lu Tianyan said loudly. He didn't transmit his voice, but deliberately let everyone hear him. Then, he continued to transmit his voice, and this kid's strength isn't weak. Although he didn't reveal the aura of a divine spark, since he can say that he signed the supreme contract of the immortal world, he's naturally a reincarnated spirit of all things. What do you think? Great minds think alike, Shen Tuoling transmitted his voice. Since this kid is so arrogant, why don't the two of us, as well as everyone, join forces to destroy this kid first, then start the competition to determine who the controller belongs to? Lu Tianyan said loudly again. That makes sense. Ha ha ha, then let's kill this arrogant kid together. Shen Tuoling laughed loudly. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to put down his face and win with numbers. Even if Qin Hao arrogantly took the initiative to announce that all the spirits of all things could attack together, he wouldn't be able to do it. That was the pride of a heavenly venerate, and he couldn't afford to lose face. But Lu Tianyan's words made him have no concerns in this regard. Even if they joined forces to kill Qin Hao, they wouldn't lose face in the slightest. Because none of them were willing to reveal their strength before meeting the other. What a dignified reason. That's right. Let's destroy this arrogant guy first, then decide the victor. Yes, 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 let's attack together. Sign the immortal world contract. Simply dreaming. If he wants to sign it, we'll make him sign it. Okay, let's attack together. Many spirits of all things responded. Even the spirits of all things who hadn't spoken before spoke at this moment, all of them gathering their auras and preparing for battle. Walla, shameless. Reincarnated heavenly venerates, spirits of all things, are all such shameless people. So shameless, what bullshit heavenly venerates, spirits of all things, damn it, I think they're just a bunch of spineless trash. But since the president dares to let them attack together, he's naturally fearless. Yes, 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 kill them all. God of Slaughter Qin Hao is invincible. President is invincible. Kill, 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 kill. Qin Hao's believers in the vast universe galaxy and other galaxies began to curse the spirits of all things shamelessly. Soon, their shouts turned into cheers for Qin Hao. However, I have to make one thing clear. Only those who attack together will have the qualifications to continue competing for the position of controller. If you don't, you'll lose your qualifications. Does everyone agree? Lu Tianyan said again. Clearly, this guy wasn't just the reincarnation of a powerful heavenly venerate, but he was also an expert at playing tricks. Even the spirits of all things of the human race weren't spared. Because at this moment, except for the 16 spirits of all things of the human race, the other 9 galaxies' spirits of all things had all responded. Since that's the case, for the future of the vast universe galaxy, I, Su Wensheng, can only take action. The strongest of the 16 spirits of all things of the human race, Su Wensheng, who had just been rejected by Xiao Feng and had lost all face, shook his head helplessly and said. As he spoke, his aura began to strengthen, and he slowly flew towards the arena. Chapter 1501. Shoo, fuck. What is this? To think that he's from our vast universe galaxy, bah. Damn it. I was optimistic about this kind of trash before. Hurry up and die. Su Wensheng's appearance made the cultivators of the vast universe galaxy boo again and again. They were abnormally angry, and many people couldn't help but curse. This was really too shameless. No matter what, God of Slaughter Qin Hao was from the vast universe galaxy. At this moment, even if they couldn't help, they couldn't hit him when he was down, right? Even if it was because of Xiao Feng's previous rejection, in front of righteousness, they had to give way. However, Su Wensheng risked universal condemnation and joined forces with the spirits of all living things from other galaxies to fight against God of Slaughter Qin Hao. Fortunately, the remaining 15 spirits of all living things of the human race didn't move in the end. Boom! Boom boom boom, on the stage, an incomparably powerful aura bloomed. The terrifying pressure of divine sparks stirred heaven and earth, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Golden light surged, as if condensing into a golden river, pressing down on Qin Hao. The battle hadn't started yet, but the terrifying pressure of the divine sparks had already made everyone tremble in fear. At this moment, Qin Hao was like a lonely boat floating in a tsunami. In everyone's eyes, he could be swallowed by the golden sea at any time. However, Qin Hao stood proudly while his expression was still calm to the extreme. He didn't care about Lu Tianyan and Chen Tuoling's shamelessness in the slightest. Attacking them together was the result he wanted the most. Because only in this way would he be able to annihilate them together. Otherwise, would the other dare to attack him after he killed one? As for Su Wensheng, Qin Hao didn't put him in his eyes at all. He was just the strongest of the 16 spirits of all living things of the human race. Ha ha ha, God of slaughter Qin Hao, remember not to be so arrogant in your next life. Arrogance requires capital. You want to challenge all of us alone. I really don't know where your confidence comes from. You're an idiot to the point that no one can compare. Ha, people can't live in the past. Times have changed. The Emperor's star group has appeared, and spirits of all living things have appeared. Do you think we're the ants that you can trample on? End your own life. Perhaps I can leave you with a complete corpse. You don't have to be so cruel. You just need to destroy your Taoist root and become an ordinary person. Maybe it's a good choice for you. With your pretty face, you can live off a woman. Ha ha ha, many spirits of all living beings taunted Qin Hao while increasing the pressure of their godheads, pressing down on Qin Hao. Although they were speaking in a relaxed manner, at this point, there was no one who wasn't apprehensive. This was because Qin Hao, who looked like he could be swallowed up by the godhood pressure at any time, didn't even frown from the beginning to the end. He allowed them to do whatever they wanted, but he still stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his body as straight as a sword. Just by standing there, he gave people a feeling that he couldn't be shaken, as if his feet were rooted to the earth, and his head was connected to the sky. With Qin Hao domineeringly killing Li Feng of the divine race before, not to mention the cultivators who thought that they were inferior to Li Feng, even Lu Tianyan and Shen Tuoling didn't dare to take the lead and become the target of Qin Hao's thunderous strike. Anyone could imagine that at this moment, God of Slaughter Qin Hao didn't make a move, but when he did, it would definitely be earth-shattering. The so-called spirits of all living things are nothing more than a bunch of spineless soft-footed shrimps. Whoever blabbers again, I'll be the first to kill him. In the face of everyone's provocations, Qin Hao finally spoke. Qin Hao's calm but ice-cold words had just fallen when the spirits of all living things who were still blabbering and flaunting their sharp tongues suddenly shut up as if someone had grabbed their throats. Voila, the surrounding crowd was dumbfounded. Vast universe galaxy and God of Slaughter Qin Hao's believers were seething with excitement. How awe-inspiring was this? One person facing so many high and mighty spirits of all living things, and just one sentence could make everyone shut up. What kind of concept was this? Humph. Lu Tianyan snorted coldly and felt deeply ashamed. After coldly glancing at the spirits of all living things who were scared to the point of shutting their mouths at the same time, he looked at Shen Tuoling and said, "Let's attack together." You should have done this long ago. You've all lost your face, a bunch of trash. Kill. As Shen Tuoling spoke the word kill, he and Lu Tianyan attacked at the same time. Boom. Boom. Kill. 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 With the two great heavenly venerable level spirits of all living things taking the lead, the spirits of all living things surrounding Qin Hao also activated their strongest power and violently attacked. In an instant, all kinds of incomparably powerful Tao laws gushed out, covering the sky and covering the sun. It was extremely shocking, and it seemed as if the sky was about to be shattered. Endless heaven and earth energy was directly sucked out. What was even more terrifying was that the 9 heavens and 10 earths were actually connected. With Lu Tianyan and Shen Tuoling as the representatives, surging immortal qi surged down. In almost an instant, God of Slaughter Qin Hao was surrounded and drowned by countless terrifying divine abilities. That terrifying aura caused everyone to open their eyes wide. Qin Hao's followers even spontaneously started to pray for Qin Hao. Even Yilan, who trusted Qin Hao very much, clenched his fists at this moment and held his breath. No one wasn't nervous. Hiss. It was also at this moment that a crimson-red spear light tore through the sea of pressure from the golden divinity, and it pierced through the numerous terrifying divine abilities as it tore through the sky. Boom. 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 Amidst endless terrifying explosions, God of Slaughter Chin Hao, a man, a spear, and a beast, man, spear, and beast as one, charged out in a domineering manner. Huh? What? Don't, pooh. Amidst the shocked cries of countless people, the space between the brows of one of the spirits of all living things was penetrated. After that, blood dyed the sky red as it was swallowed by the ferocious beast beneath Chin Hao. Hiss. God of Slaughter Chin Hao suddenly changed directions, and like a flickering shadow, he forcefully broke through the layers of attacks with matchless violence as he stabbed out with his spear once more. What's that? How can he be so strong? Everyone was dumbfounded by this scene, especially the spirits of all living things, who were trembling with fear. Heavenly Dragon. Heavenly Dragon's might. The aura of an Empyrean godhead. The surrounding cultivators couldn't recognize what kind of ferocious beast Chin Hao's mount was. It looked like a dragon, but it was very different from the dragons they knew. However, the spirits of all living things present could recognize it. The heavenly dragon's might, moreover, it was a reincarnated spirit of all living things, which had already scared many spirits of all living things out of their wits. Not to mention, the aura of an Empyrean godhead also emerged from Chin Hao's forehead. This aura was definitely stronger than Lu Tianyan and Xin Tuoling's. The reason was simple, Chin Hao's Empyrean godhead had been fully activated, which meant it was fully awakened. Whereas Lu Tianyan and Xin Tuoling had not fully activated their Empyrean godhead, so how could they bear to do so? Fully activating their Empyrean godhead meant returning to their previous path. In this life, at most, they would return to their previous life's peak. That was not what they wanted. Madman, is it really an Empyrean-level spirit of all living things? Fully activating their Empyrean godhead, so ruthless. Lu Tianyan and Xin Tuoling were aghast. At this moment, they were already vaguely regretting that they had provoked such a lunatic. Chapter 1502. Every time the spear light flashed, a spirit of all things flesh and blood would fly, and then it would be swallowed by the heavenly dragon mount along with its godhead. Under the terrifying pressure of the heavenly venerable godhead, ordinary spirits of all things were no match for it. Don't kill me, I admit defeat, I'm willing to sign the contract. It's too late. What answered them was Chin Hao's cold, merciless, and murderous voice. Die. God of Slaughter Chin Hao, countless cultivators, especially those who had never seen God of Slaughter Chin Hao's methods with their own eyes, personally experienced the terror of the title, God of Slaughter, at this moment. They were high and mighty spirits of all things, existences that were treated like treasures by any force, but now they were like cheap cabbages being ruthlessly trampled by God of Slaughter Chin Hao. Brilliant spear light filled the entire arena, reaping the lives of the spirits of all things, but everyone present, even the reincarnated heavenly venerable Lu Tianyan and Tuoling, didn't know what kind of divine ability Chin Hao had used. The only thing they could feel was the aura of the great Tao, a kind of Tao aura that made heaven and earth pale in comparison, domineering and invincible. Whether it was those who begged for mercy or those who wanted to escape the arena, without exception, they were all pierced by God of Slaughter Chin Hao's spear. Ruthless, cold. Only kill. In a short time, there were only 3 spirits of all things left. Lu Tianyan, Xin Tuoling, and Su Wensheng. However, the 3 of them were able to stay, not because they could withstand Chin Hao's terrifying attack, but because from beginning to end, God of Slaughter Chin Hao hadn't taken the 3 of them as hunting targets. To be precise, Chin Hao hadn't attacked them yet. It was more exciting to leave the boss for last. Lu Tianyan and Xin Tuoling's expressions were very ugly and solemn. They thought that God of Slaughter Chin Hao wasn't simple, otherwise, they wouldn't have joined forces. After all, no matter how dignified the reason was, it was still bullying with numbers. But they didn't expect him to be so powerful. Nearly 300 spirits of all creation had been killed in such a short period of time. This was something that the two of them could never have done. Su Wensheng was relatively calm. What are you hesitating for? If this goes on, we'll all die. Awaken. Activate your godhead completely. Only by doing so can you kill it. Lu Tianyan roared. Boom. At the same time, he took the initiative to fully activate his godhead. The terrifying strength displayed by the god of slaughter Qin Hao had made him understand that there was no way out. He could only fight to the death. God of slaughter Qin Hao's fully awakened heavenly venerable godhead wasn't something that ordinary spirits could resist. Even Qin Hao and Shen Tuoling couldn't resist Qin Hao's attack before fully activating their heavenly venerable godhead. What's more, the god of slaughter Qin Hao was riding the heavenly dragon mount, an existence not inferior to a celestial venerable. Let's fight. Boom. Shen Tuoling also activated his godhead with all his might. Su Wensheng instead retreated with a calm expression, and he stared at god of slaughter Qin Hao, Lu Tianyan, and Shen Tuoling, and he acted as if he was going to wait and see. Su Wensheng, what do you mean? Lu Tianyan, Shen Tuoling, and the others said unhappily. They had fully awakened their godheads, how could they let others enjoy the fruits of their labor? It was necessary to activate their godheads. Do you want to die? Quickly awaken. If you want to give up the second path, everyone should give up. Otherwise, there's no need for god of slaughter Qin Hao to make a move. The two of us will kill you first. Shen Tuoling shouted angrily. They could also feel that although Su Wensheng's godhead wasn't at the heavenly venerable rank, it was still one of the best among the spirits of all living beings. If it fully awakened, it would still be helpful to them. Of course, the most important thing was that they didn't want someone to benefit from it. Su Wensheng frowned slightly. He glanced at Shen Tuoling and said, "It's just a second-rate heavenly venerable and a mediocre heavenly dragon. It's not to the point that I, Su Wensheng, give up the second path. Are you sure you want to fight me? I don't mind killing you first, then I'll fight with god of slaughter Qin Hao." What? Su Wensheng's words shocked everyone. What surprised them even more was that the aura around Su Wensheng's body rose several times as he spoke. Even Qin Hao, who had temporarily stopped killing, was slightly stunned. I actually misjudged. Qin Hao had long seen that Su Wensheng was the strongest among the 16 spirits of all living beings, but it was only in the human race. Compared to the reincarnated heavenly venerables, Lu Tianyan and Shen Tuoling, he was far inferior. But at this moment, Su Wensheng's aura, the aura of pure strength, had actually reached the point where even Qin Hao was shocked. Alright, this is a little interesting. Right now, Qin Hao was only controlling Gu Xian's heavenly venerable godhead. He, who had awakened his own inheritance, had already integrated its profundity into his Tao, the Tao of this life. He was many times stronger than when he was in the great world of CND. Not to mention the spirits of all living beings, even Lu Tianyan and Shen Tuoling couldn't arouse Qin Hao's interest. How is this possible? Lu Tianyan and Shen Tuoling were shocked. At this moment, the aura Su Wensheng was emitting was already much stronger than the two of them. If he fully activated his godhead, what kind of concept would that be? I admit defeat. Swish. Lu Tianyan almost didn't hesitate. At the same time he spoke, he madly wanted to charge out of the stage with his strongest strength and fastest speed. Su Wensheng's sudden outburst made him understand that the final victor belonged to the human race. If it wasn't god of slaughter Qin Hao, it would be Su Wensheng. It was impossible for him and Shen Tuoling to have a share. Continue to fight foolishly. That was simply a dead end. Too late. Swish. It was still that cold, merciless voice filled with killing intent. It was still the same blood-red spear light. It was still, without exception, the spear exploded, the head, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. It was still the same, the heavenly dragon mount swallowed, but the difference was that this spear killed Lu Tianyan, who had fully awakened his heavenly venerable godhead. No one could describe how terrifying this spear strike was. To be more precise, in the eyes of most people, this spear strike was no different from the previous one. But the heavenly venerable Godhead, who was in everyone's mind, had died so easily. At this moment, Su Wensheng's calm expression also showed a trace of seriousness because of God of Slaughter Qin Hao's spear strike. However, after the seriousness, there was even more excitement. Swish! Without the slightest sign, Su Wensheng suddenly vanished on the spot, causing the hearts of everyone to jerk. Obviously, as far as everyone was concerned, the true peak battle was about to arrive, the battle between Su Wensheng, who concealed himself extremely deeply, and the God of Slaughter, Qin Hao. But what surprised everyone was that God of Slaughter Qin Hao stood on the spot without moving, and even his aura didn't fluctuate in the slightest. Ah! Soon after, a shrill scream sounded, and everyone saw a shocking scene. Su Wensheng's hand was strangling the neck of the terrified Shen Tuoling. Chapter 1503. It was like she was holding up a little chick. No matter how Qin Tuoling struggled and shouted, it was completely useless. A strand of terrifying and profound laws of the Tao completely restrained him like a steel bar, and even his godhead was unable to escape. After a while, Shen Tuoling's vitality completely disappeared, and he turned into an abnormally shriveled corpse. All his essence, energy, vitality, and blood qi had been devoured. The taste is barely passable. Su Wensheng smiled and casually threw Shen Tuoling's dried corpse on the ground. His smile was full of bloodthirst. All the hindrances have been eliminated. I didn't expect you to be Qin Hao, the god of slaughter. You were able to appear beside me without me noticing. You are indeed not simple. Su Wensheng stared at Qin Hao, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. You were able to hide from my perception. You are not simple either. Qin Hao also smiled. His pitch-black eyes were surging with fighting spirit, and like Su Wensheng, they became dazzling. Whoosh! 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 Fighting spirit, an incomparably powerful fighting spirit, instantly formed hurricanes around the two of them. An overwhelming pressure also spread between the heavens and the earth. At this moment, all the cultivators in the martial arts practice field held their breaths. Before this, no one thought that Su Wensheng had hidden so much and was so powerful that even a heavenly master-level spirit of all things could not withstand a single blow. Therefore, now everyone was very sure that the battle between him and Qin Hao, the god of slaughter, would definitely be a top battle. It could no longer be measured by their own realms. Even their absolute power was completely beyond the shackles of realms. This was because what they attracted was the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and the billowing immortal qi from the ninth heaven, which reduced the influence of their own strength to a negligible level. Of course, it did not mean that the two of them had completely transcended the shackles of realms. That was impossible. Otherwise, what was there to be afraid of even in the great world of Xiandi and the Star River King, not to mention the chaotic universe? Their realms determined the amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth that they could attract. This could not be changed. Boom! Boom, 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 qi! Su Wensheng made his move when the battle intent and pressure of the two clashed and exploded with terrifying fluctuations. Su Wensheng unleashed a move. Sword qi filled the sky as boundless Taoist rhythms transformed into swords of heaven and earth. The might of a celestial lord was vast and mighty. Strand after strand of swords descended from the 9 heavens and the 10 earths. It was like a river of life that could devour all living things and extinguish the vitality of the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Just this aura alone was enough to make people tremble in fear. They didn't even dare to think of resisting and could only allow themselves to be slaughtered. The heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The sun set and the moon sank. The might of a single sword caused yin and yang to collapse and order to collapse. Who could stop it? Countless people turned pale with fright. Even Yilan, Huyan Albua and Butt Face, who had absolute trust in Qin Hao, Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, Ni Jian Pain, Dong Feng Jun, and other original brothers and sisters of Qin Hao in the crowd, as well as the people who were sensing the outside world through Qin Hao's mind, were all worried for Qin Hao at this moment. In the face of this shocking sword, Qin Hao's pupils constricted. He opened his heaven eye between his eyebrows. In the depths of his 3 pitch-black eyes, especially in the heaven eye, there seemed to be countless pictures flashing rapidly. Those were complicated divine inscriptions that were flowing. They quickly combined, separated, combined, and separated again, carrying out complicated deductions. It's useless. This is the combination of my second great Tao and my first great Tao. My newest great Tao, even though it hasn't really taken shape yet, even the reborn Celestial Emperor might not be able to see through it, especially in such a short time. Die, ha, ha, ha. The Celestial Emperor. Even the reborn Celestial Emperor couldn't see through it. How confident, how arrogant was he? Who was the Celestial Emperor? He was the most powerful person in the celestial realm, a supreme existence. He carried the mandate of heaven and controlled all the worlds. No one dared to disobey him in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. He was a truly invincible existence, the existence at the peak of the Tao, and the only existence. Qi. In the midst of Su Wensheng's complacent laughter, at the last moment when the heaven-defying sword was about to land on Chen Hao's body, Chen Hao's pitch-black eyes suddenly focused, and he finally made his move. Spear Radiance. Endless Taoist principles, endless celestial qi, and majestic power gushed out and condensed into a spear radiance at the fastest speed, suddenly meeting the attack. Clang. Rumble. At this moment, it was as if the endless Milky Way had collided. Countless stars collapsed, splashing out rays of dazzling and terrifying celestial light. Strands of appalling great Tao aura broke through the seal of the arena and shot into the depths of the 9 heavens, illuminating the endless starry sky. Buzz! At this moment, the sky seemed to have really been broken. Endless celestial qi rolled in from the 9 heavens, as if the Milky Way had fallen from the 9 heavens. It quickly gathered in the void, and in an instant, it covered the sky and the sun. At the same time, a vast and terrifying pressure poured down, causing all the creatures in the entire great 1,000 worlds of ancient chaos, no matter where they were, to look up at the sky in extreme horror. With just a glance, they all prostrated themselves on the ground, as if doomsday had arrived. Even the people in Chen Hao's mind space were no exception. Heaven-defying. As expected. God of killing Chen Hao, you are indeed very good. Although you didn't see through my Tao, you should be proud that you were able to withstand my attack. Now, I give you 2 choices. First, pledge your loyalty to me. In the future, you will be an existence second only to one in the celestial realm. In this life, the one who will bear the mandate of heaven must be me, Su Wensheng. Second, die. Those who block my Tao, no matter who it is, even if it is the reborn Celestial Emperor, must die. Su Wensheng looked at Chen Hao, who was bathed in blood and had obviously been severely injured by him, and said disdainfully. His words caused the heaven and earth to shake, and the heaven-defying tribulation clouds and terrifying pressure suddenly became stronger. Obviously, Su Wensheng's words were not only looking down on God of killing Chen Hao, but also on heaven and earth. I haven't experienced the feeling of being injured for a long time, this feeling is really good. Chen Hao's pitch-black eyes fell straight on Su Wensheng's face, who was unscathed. His thumb swiped across his cheek, and wiped the blood into his mouth. He tasted the taste of the blood and said softly, I also give you 2 choices. First, self-destruct. Second, I will do it. Of course, if you have a stronger Tao, just pretend I didn't say anything, and let's continue. Above the 9 heavens, under the endless immortal qi and the terrifying pressure that made everyone submit, the 2 of them were not affected at all. Moreover, neither of them cared about the tribulation clouds that were rapidly forming in the void. The heaven-defying tribulation clouds. That was a tribulation cloud that exceeded the knowledge of everyone present, and it made everyone kneel on the ground and submit to it. Only in this way could they not be restrained and hurt by the pressure. Even Yilan, who was at the true immortal king realm, was no exception. This made Yilan, some experts, and the remaining spirits of all living things of the human race know that Su Wensheng and Chen Hao were heaven-defying. They were not only defying the heavens of the ancient chaos great thousand world, but also the heavens of the celestial realm. Chapter 1504. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then go to hell. Tut! Su Wensheng roared and slashed with his sword. In an instant, a more terrifying Taoist rhyme and celestial master pressure gushed out and condensed into the heavenly sword light, tearing the void apart. Swish! Boom! At this moment, even the tribulation clouds that were rapidly forming up in the void began to tremble violently under the might of Su Wensheng's sword. It was like a raging tsunami that brought forth countless streams of immortal chi that gushed out in a single line. They were all devoured by the sword light and strengthened. Such a scene made everyone turn pale with fright. Seizing the power of heaven's punishment. Any heaven's punishment would borrow the power of all things in the world and gather the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to form the tribulation clouds. It was good enough that the tribulation clouds did not devour the cultivator's energy. How could anyone seize the power of heaven's punishment? This was simply too crazy. Swish! At this moment, Chen Hao also attacked. Instantly, the Overlord's spear pointed out and dazzling spear flowers floated out to meet Su Wensheng's sword light. Flowers! At this moment, the people who were prostrating on the ground felt that their hearts and minds were captured by Chen Hao's spear flowers. They were so enchanting and beautiful, like the most beautiful scenery and the most beautiful woman in the world. With just one glance, they could no longer take their eyes off her. Wasn't that their first love who had passed away? Wasn't that the woman they loved the most but couldn't get? Wasn't that the Prince Charming whom they pursued so hard but failed to get? Wasn't that the child they loved the most but died prematurely? Different scenes appeared in the hearts of different people. Those were the most beautiful memories in their hearts, but also their biggest regrets, regrets that could never be made up for in their lives. Just like that, it quietly grew in the hearts of the cultivators, and then it rippled out. It was as if they saw the most beautiful person and the most beautiful thing in the past. They were immersed in the moment when they were the most moved. They forgot everything, including themselves. The world of mortals flowed into their hearts. Is it you? Is it really you? Xian, you're finally back, you're back. Yilan looked at the void and tears flowed down his face. It was as if he saw the woman he loved the most in his life and his most beloved daughter. He, who was already a true immortal king, was actually lost under Chen Hao's spear flowers. And he just took a glance. How much impact did Su Wensheng, who bore the brunt of Chen Hao's attack, suffer? Su Wensheng, who was the reincarnation of a top celestial master, was stunned when he saw the flowers of spear flowers blossoming from Chen Hao's spear light. Beautiful. It was an indescribable beauty, but it was also a poignant beauty, and also an indescribable pain. He saw himself in the past, a man who looked down upon the world and traversed the starry sky. He was only one step away from shouldering the mandate of heaven, commanding the myriad of worlds, and being the only one in the world. He also saw himself unable to extricate himself with a single glance. He swore to obtain her, but just as he was about to obtain her by hook or by crook, she threw herself into the arms of his lifelong enemy. After losing her, he lost everything, including the chance to carry the mandate of heaven. He didn't hesitate to provoke the great war of the three Daos, and even the war of the 10,000 realms. However, in the end, the Tao of the heavens was destroyed, and the endless cycle of reincarnation began. It was at that time that he understood that the Emperor of Heaven was not the pinnacle of cultivation, and that the immortal world was not the end of cultivation. Perhaps it was just a new beginning, a new beginning. Now, he was awake. After a short period of sluggishness, he also woke up. It was still that resplendent spear flower, the flower of fate, the Tao of fate. It's you. When Su Wensheng woke up, his face became abnormally twisted. I should have guessed that it was you. Who in this world can go against me? Even if I reincarnate, there will only be you. Fate, karma, it is inevitable that we will meet again. An endless amount of immortal light soared into the sky. An indescribably powerful space-time essence appeared out of thin air, making it seem like time had stopped. Even the terrifying attacks launched by Su Wensheng and Qin Hao seemed to have stopped. Who is it? Qin Hao was slightly surprised. He was surprised that the other party had already mastered the laws of space-time to the finest extent. This was because their attacks had already been imbued with at least 10,000 times the space-time essence. The attacks that were originally going to meet in an instant were forcibly delayed by 10,000 times before they could meet. At the same time, Qin Hao was also curious that the other party seemed to have recognized him. Who was it? Qin Hao also did not know who he used to be. Do you think you can still hide from me when your mastery of emotions and desires has reached such a level? Other than you, who else can combine the flowers of 7 emotions and 6 desires? Lord Celestial Emperor. Su Wensheng shouted in a mocking tone, but his eyes were filled with monstrous hatred. Lord Celestial Emperor. Qin Hao was taken aback. Voila, the cultivators who were prostrating themselves in the martial arts practice field all sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at Killer God Qin Hao. Lord Celestial Emperor. Killer God Qin Hao is the Lord Celestial Emperor. No wonder, no wonder. Bearing the mandate of heaven, I am supreme. That is a truly invincible existence in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Boss is the Lord Celestial Emperor. Ha ha ha. Lord Celestial Emperor, Lord Celestial Emperor, the cultivators in the vast universe star system and other star systems who persisted in supporting Killer God Qin Hao and believed in Killer God Qin Hao were all inexplicably excited. Was there a more powerful existence than the Lord Celestial Emperor? At this moment, Qin Hao's believers became even more devout. This kind of unreserved faith gave their hearts the safest sustenance, and they became even more tranquil and serene. Their state of mind was also sublimated and transformed. Am I really the Lord Celestial Emperor? Qin Hao asked himself, but he did not have an answer. What he had awakened was only the inheritance of an absolute art. Moreover, it was a passive awakening that triggered a similar absolute art in his mind. As for his past memories, there was not a shred of them. How did he know who he was? That shouldn't be it. Qin Hao thought back to what Yang Luyan had said to him. If he was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor, how could Yang Luyan not know? How could she not mention it at all? She only said that his soul had fused and mutated. However, he could not be completely sure that he was not the Lord Celestial Emperor. The Tao that I just used was also a Tao that I deduced from the Red Dust Heart Sutra and thousands of runes. It was definitely not awakened. Otherwise, how could I not be able to defeat him in the first blow and be seriously injured? Maybe it was just a coincidence. Qin Hao threw away the surprise in his heart. Who is the Lord Celestial Emperor? I don't know him, nor am I interested in knowing. I don't think it has anything to do with me. I only know that I am Qin Hao, the person who will kill you. As Qin Hao spoke, he held the spear in one hand while his other hand rapidly formed hand seals. Profound talisman markings that contained the laws of space and time gently condensed at the tip of his finger like numerous dazzling stars. After that, he pointed out with his finger. 9-star alignment. Chapter 1505. Boom. In an instant, it was as if 9 stars had penetrated Su Wensheng's space-time ultimacy. The space burst like a colorful bubble. The spear flower and the heavenly sword, which seemed to be in slow motion, suddenly lost the support of the space-time ultimacy. Their speed returned to normal, and they violently attacked. You haven't awakened your memory. That's right, the aura of this godhead is obviously the godhead of a second-rate celestial master that you're controlling. It's the same as the sky dragon, right? Humph. In my previous life, I wasn't any worse than you, but you were lucky enough to get her, causing me to fall into a demonic trap. In this life, I'll take back everything that belongs to me. Die. Su Wensheng didn't stop Qin Hao from breaking the space-time seal that he had condensed. Instead, he crazily urged his attack. Boom. The spear flower and the sword radiance crashed into each other, and a terrifying explosion resounded throughout the world. Around the training field, countless palaces collapsed. All the cultivators who were prostrating on the ground cried out in alarm, afraid that they would be affected by the raging energy shockwaves. It must be known that even the shockwaves were not something that everyone present could withstand. Fortunately, the masters of the major galaxies and the top experts of the cutting path perfected immortal realm had all stepped in to help. They formed a powerful protective barrier in front of the crowd, which prevented serious damage. Rumble, the light of the heavenly sword soared into the sky as if a celestial master had personally arrived. The strongest celestial master's aura surged out, and it was many times stronger than Gu Xian's and Su Juanfeng's celestial master's aura. It was just like the genius disciples of the ancient chaos great thousand world and the genius disciples of the great world of Xian Di. They were on completely different levels. Puff! Suddenly, a soft sound rang out clearly in the midst of the terrifying explosion. It was extremely strange. The heavenly sword that was clearly capable of devouring everything was easily pierced through by the most enchanting spear flower. There was no terrifying explosion, but immediately after, it was as if a chain reaction occurred. The incomparably huge heavenly sword only dimmed a little even when the spear flowers collided. The heavenly sword that did not lose its momentum actually began to rapidly collapse at the point where the spear flowers pierced through it. Like a dike of 1,000 li being destroyed by an ant's nest. Su Wensheng was shocked. He, who was in the Daluo Golden Wonderland, had originally thought that he would be able to comprehend a new Tao and merge it with the supreme Tao of his previous life. He had definitely achieved a level that no one had ever achieved before, and no one would be able to surpass him in the future. Even if the god of massacre Qin Hao used the original flower of 7 emotions and 6 desires, he would definitely not be able to break through it. But now, it had been broken. How could it be possible for it to break without any warning? Puff! Immediately after, there was another sound. The beautiful spear seemed to be moving slowly, but in fact, it had transcended the restraints of time and space. In an instant, it pierced through Su Wensheng's knee, causing him to kneel down. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The bewitching flower broke the space-time seal, detonated the heavenly sword, and pierced through the kneecap. It was all done in one go and nothing could stop it. Crack! At that instant, the terrifying heaven-defying tribulation finally descended. Thick bolts of lightning struck down from the sky, attacking the god of slaughter Qin Hao and Su Wensheng. Pooh! Su Wensheng suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Instead of being shocked, he was overjoyed. Good timing, the heavens are on my side. After saying that, he got up with great difficulty. With a boom, his essence, energy, and spirit burst out like an ocean. He opened his arms as if he wanted to embrace the lightning that carried the supreme Tao of the immortal world and could destroy all things in the world. Rumble, in an instant, his body was submerged in endless lightning. At the same time, Qin Hao also completely opened himself up, allowing the heavenly punishment to descend upon him. Heavenly punishment. After stepping into the Daluo Golden Wonderland, Qin Hao had triggered the heaven-defying tribulation several times. This time, it was undoubtedly the most powerful one. Naturally, for the freakish Qin Hao, it was also the best opportunity to temper himself. It had to be said that a battle with an expert was indeed the best way to temper oneself. Without Su Wensheng, Qin Hao would not have been able to progress further on his Tao in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. He would not have had the opportunity to defy the heavens again. Moreover, both of them had triggered the heaven-defying tribulation. Ha ha ha. Heaven-defying tribulation, heaven-defying tribulation, heaven-defying tribulation. After the heaven-defying tribulation, I'd like to see how you're going to fight me. Devour. Buzz. 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 In the endless lightning, not only did Su Wensheng open himself up to the lightning to temper his body and mind, but he also opened his mouth and devoured the endless lightning power like a kunpeng swallowing the sky. This was his Tao. There was nothing in the world that he could not devour. By devouring an expert, he could obtain the energy of that expert. By devouring lightning, he could obtain the power of lightning. It had to be said that this was an extremely freakish Tao. If he could comprehend the energy he devoured, it would truly become his own strength. He was already clear about this point when the tribulation clouds of heavenly punishment began to gather. Heavenly punishment would also be one of his trump cards. However, until the moment before, he did not think that he would use the power of heavenly punishment to deal with Chen Hao. He alone was enough. Why wait until heavenly punishment is over? I suddenly have a new idea. Killing you is simply too easy. Open your soul palace and pledge your loyalty to me. Perhaps I can spare your life. Contrary to Su Wensheng's and everyone else's expectations, God of Slaughter Chen Hao actually walked towards Su Wensheng amidst the endless lightning. Whether it was the physical body, the mind, or the soul, the terrifying lightning contained a terrifying attack. However, Chen Hao, who was clearly completely open and facing the heavenly punishment head-on, walked calmly and elegantly amidst the endless lightning, as if it was nothing at all. Every lightning that landed on his body seemed to have directly entered his body. There was no need for him to devour them individually. Su Wensheng felt as if his throat had been crushed, and he could no longer laugh. Besides the terrifying sound of thunder, everyone was silent. Even Yilan, who was at the true immortal king realm, had lost the ability to move. The heaven-defying heavenly punishment of the immortal world did not target them, nor did it strike them. However, when the heavenly punishment completely descended at such a close distance, it was not something they could resist. At this moment, the only thing left was their thoughts: dream on. After the shock, Su Wensheng was furious. He could not be bothered to use heavenly punishment to temper his body. He suddenly gathered his energy, and the speed at which he devoured the lightning instantly increased by several times. Is that so? Chen Hao suddenly took a step forward quickly. He actually arrived above Su Wensheng in an instant and stomped down. Boom! Su Wensheng did not have time to react at all. The foot that was as heavy as a star and contained endless lightning and terrifying Dao laws forcefully stomped down on Su Wensheng. Su Wensheng roared furiously. His entire body trembled violently, and sweat poured down like rain. Blood was squeezed out from every pore of his body due to the terrifying pressure. He who was originally heavily injured was holding on with all his might. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. Bang! His body was still crushed in the end, but his soul core was directly restrained by Chen Hao, and it was sucked into the space between his brows along with his godhead. Crack! After that, Chen Hao directly sat down cross-legged in midair. He paid no attention to the shock of countless people as he directly started to receive the baptism of heavenly punishment. Chapter 1506. Is this really the heavenly punishment condensed from the supreme law of the immortal world? It's just as so. The terrifying heavenly punishment did not pose much of a challenge to Chen Hao. Whether it was the physical body, the soul, or the state of mind, they were all within Chen Hao's tolerance range. He did not even have the ability to challenge the limits. This was beyond Chen Hao's expectations. After all, this was a heaven-defying heavenly punishment that connected the immortal world. It could be said to be the strongest heavenly punishment in this plane. This also means that my strength in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland has already surpassed the strength of the supreme law in this realm. If I can continue to improve like this, will I be an existence that surpasses this starry sky plane? Phew. Perhaps. Thinking of this, Chen Hao thought of Yang Luyan, whose real body had already left this starry sky plane. It was also Yang Luyan's words that made Chen Hao realize that the immortal world and the thousands of worlds below it were not the end of a cultivator's journey. There was no end to the Tao. At least, Chen Hao still could not see the end and did not know where the end was. Killing God Chen Hao. Killing God Chen Hao. The heavenly punishment stopped and the tribulation clouds dissipated. After being freed from the pressure of the heavenly punishment and regaining their freedom, the believers of Death God Chen Hao began to excitedly cheer. The words Death God Chen Hao once again resounded through the heavens and earth, resounding through the entire ancient chaos. This time, it was incomparably firm and did not waver in the slightest. When Yilan handed the ancient chaos order to Qin Hao, he did not decline and directly refined and controlled the ancient chaos order. Without needing Qin Hao to force them, the rulers of the 9 major galaxies, the tyrants, the Protoss, the Zergs, and the other ancient chaos counselors, took the initiative to declare their allegiance and opened their soul dwellings to let Qin Hao plant the seeds of faith. Similarly, more than 10 spirits of all creation from the human race were no exception. The entire ancient chaos became one voice, the voice of the killing god Qin Hao. It was a powerful and domineering voice. At this moment, Qin Hao was no longer the Qin Hao of the past. After experiencing the great world of CND, he was ready to step into the 10-direction domain and advance to a higher realm. He didn't want to be distracted by ancient chaos. Therefore, he couldn't be soft-hearted. He had to firmly control everything about ancient chaos. That was the best choice. 3 days later, Xi Xian, Chen Nan, Pan Long, Du Jing, Chen Ling, Ito Tai, Pan Donglu, and the others who had entered the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, under the leadership of Ruolan and Ruoxian, stepped into the ancient chaos void realm and began their training in the ancient chaos boundless world. As for Qin Hao, Qin Shui, Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, and the other girls, as well as Miao Xian, Wang Yishui, and Xue Fian, as well as Qing Yang, Ning Jing, Ao Qian, Ling Feng, and the other Daoyuo Jingxian, they all stepped into the ancient chaos boundless world's Shifang region, which was also the Hongmeng region. Wan Qinglan had drifted in the chaotic space for more than 1,000 years, experiencing countless frightening spatial storms. Especially the last one, when Wan Qinglan thought that she was dead for sure, because not only had her physical body, even her soul had been destroyed. She only remembered that at the moment of death, her mind was filled with his figure. That was her demon, her obsession. It was also at the moment of her death that she seemed to have comprehended the mysteries of heaven. She saw him and clearly felt his aura. Although there had been a great change, the original perception brought about by the physical contact between them had not changed in the slightest. Therefore, she, who had already turned into nothingness, or perhaps only a strand of consciousness, seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw. She desperately moved forward, desperately approaching him. Finally, when she felt that she had entered the range of his aura, she was perfectly satisfied and fell into the endless darkness without any regrets. Perhaps it was just an illusion on the verge of death. She knew in her heart, but she would rather believe that it was real. Therefore, she died very peacefully. Her whole life, she only wanted to reach the peak of martial arts. Even if she got close to him, it was only for the sake of reaching the peak of martial arts. She had never thought that Tao companions needed true feelings. In her opinion, it was just a combination of relying on each other for their own cultivation. However, when she walked together with him, even when yin and yang had not yet intertwined, she began to doubt her previous thoughts. People were afraid that they would fall in love. And when she truly and completely belonged to him, but he could not stop her from leaving, she understood her own heart even more clearly. In life, she was his person. In death, he was her ghost. No matter what, no matter how difficult it was, she wanted to find him and become her obsession, a goal that was higher than the peak of martial arts. And now, death had come. Even if it was just an illusion brought about by her own obsession, she was satisfied. Once again, she felt that familiar aura, merged with that familiar aura, fell into the darkness at this moment, as if she was frozen in his embrace, and became eternal. Wasn't this the most beautiful ending that she had been pursuing? But, why am I awake? Where is this? Such dense spiritual energy of heaven and earth, such powerful laws of heaven and earth. Ah! Why am I like this? Nguyen Tan Lan slowly woke up. All her memories were still there, and she was still in the state that she was in when she fell into the endless darkness. However, the scene that she saw and the aura that she felt surprised her. But what surprised her even more was that she was actually a speck that existed between heaven and earth. If she did not have a sense of her own body, she would definitely not have been able to discover herself. I'm already dead. But, my consciousness. Why didn't it disappear? Why did it come to such a powerful world? Is this the great world of Xiandi? When Tan Lan realized that other than her consciousness and senses, she did not have a single shred of strength. The only thing she could do was to look at herself, drifting uncontrollably between heaven and earth. His aura. It's his aura. Ah. Spirit Spring, it's all Spirit Spring. What a huge tree. When Tan Lan, who was drifting with the wind, suddenly saw an azure body of water. It was like the sea that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was also at this moment that she sensed an aura that made her excited and surprised. It was Chen Hao's aura. What made her even more surprised was that the azure body of water that stretched as far as the eye could see was actually a high-grade spirit spring that she could not imagine. In the center of the body of water, there were two intertwined trees that reached straight to the 9 heavens. They contained an extremely clear aura that belonged to him. Mubai. Is it you? Is it really you? Nguyen Tan Lan shouted excitedly. Unfortunately, she was only a speck of dust. She was only a wisp of consciousness and could not make any sound at all. This is the tree of life. Ah, this is the Tao manifestation immortal fruit tree. Aren't these Tao laws taught to me by him? It's him. I remember now. One of the top 10 evildoers, Zhou Qinglong, once gave him the seed of the tree of life. Could it be that he cultivated this? Nguyen Tan Lan was pleasantly surprised. However, she did not know that the world she appeared in was in the mind of Chen Hao, who had tempered the prototype of a great world to near perfection in the ancient chaos Hongmeng domain. He was about to become a true great world. Similarly, Chen Hao did not know that the great world in his mind had such an amazing ability, to create a world of its own.